Excited about what God's going to do in these classes today. I'm going to use this not really because I need it, but because they're doing live stream. So, presenters, I'm sorry, but you'll have to use the microphone. I was listening to a song this morning, and some of you guys might have heard it. Brother James Wilson just came out with a new album, and one of the songs is called "I'm Not Satisfied," and it just really hit home with me this morning because I'm so thankful for the presence of God, and I'm so thankful for all that He's done, but I am not satisfied. I need more of God. I need more of His Spirit. I need more of His anointing in our music ministry and every service, because that's where it comes from. If we don't have His power, if we don't have His anointing, we're nothing. Even the most talented among us cannot make changes in our world without the anointing of the Holy Ghost. So I'm thankful for His Spirit today. We're going to have Sister Maroney come and speak to us today. We've asked her to go over some tools that she uses for her music department that I feel like are really helpful and very practical. And so let's just give her our attention today.
Thank you, Sister Joy. Thank you so much. Wow, I have a way louder voice. I hate to ask you to do this, but just because we were unable to get one of the programs to mirror on here, we did get one of them to mirror from my iPad, from my phone on here, but we did not get the other. But if you are back and you are even interested in figuring out these two little apps that have made my life so much easier, if you want to move up, it'll make it easier for you to see. It'll make it a lot easier if you want to move up, and we can all just be one big happy family. And you know, I've always heard that Pentecostals thrive on cramped spaces. We've learned that in the last couple of years at our church. We are definitely thriving on cramped spaces. So if you want to move up and make it a little bit easier for you to see on the one that I did not get to mirror. So when Sister Joy called me, I almost told her that she almost got a retired musician. I've been doing just a little bit of history before I start. My dad started a home missions church in Campbellsburg, like Bumbleberg. It's a little bitty, this big. Kentucky, when I was 5 years old, and we really didn't have a big congregation at all. And when I was 10 years old, our piano player left. She got upset over something, made a big scene, and she left. And so my dad said, "You're playing." And I was like, "I am." And he said, "Yeah." And at that point, I knew how to play one song, Sister Clark. The song was, "It is no secret what God can do." Sorry, I'm a little raspy this morning. That old song, remember? And I knew how to play it in C. And so for the next 3 Sundays, we sang "It is no secret what God can do." And how many of you are used to or know the number system? How many of you know the number system? A little bit. So basically the number system was, if you're playing in C, this is 1, this is F, and this is G, this is D, 6 is A minor. So that's the number system, and that's what a lot of musicians use today. But back then, in this little home missions church, my dad had this system where he would stand on the platform and he would do this. This was 1, this was 4, this was 5, and this was 2. And literally every song from "Oh, I Want to See Him" to "I Feel Like Traveling On," "The Royal Telephone," you know those. Anybody remember those old songs? So that's how I learned to play. And so now approaching 50, that's been 40 years, and I'm tired. So that's why I told Sister Joy she almost got a retired musician. Over the years of being involved in music ministry, from camp choirs to general conference choirs, I have seen music evolve so drastically. So we went from the songbook songs, from page 1, "My Thanks to Him," page 2 was "Oh, I Want to See Him," page 86 was "Oh, what singing, oh, what shout." We went from that to the choir days. We went to John P. Key, Hezekiah Walker, Milton Brunson, Thompson. We went to all those. And I went through all that. Now I will tell you, learning to play those songs was much more difficult. And I would spend hours learning all those 13ths and 11ths and augmenteds, and it's not quite like that today. I can pretty much sit down and learn a song in about 5 minutes if you want to. So it's a lot different. So we went from that to more kind of a campfire, hills, like around the campfire with your praise and worship music. And so now I feel like I've gone through all these phases in my long tenure of music ministry, and now this is really bad. I shouldn't say this. But I kind of feel like that we're at this place where we're like, yeah, 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 or this. That's kind of where the phase I feel like we are now. So, with that being said, I have endured through all these phases. And I do have 2 programs that I'm going to show you a little bit about today. But before I get into those, one thing my dad always taught me is that his worthiness is not predicated on our worship. He is going to be worthy of worship no matter how you feel, no matter how like the bad day that you're having, your financial problems, your doubts, your concerns. Sometimes even as a pastor's wife, I get so concerned when people come in and they're like, I'm just having a bad day and you don't get it and I lost my job and my kids and whatever. But guess what? He's still worthy. So your feelings are not predicated upon how worthy he is. So we have to keep that in mind when we're in leadership, when we're dealing with people. I know you've all done it before. If you're in music leadership, I have sat on a keyboard stand, led a choir and everything when I am so sick that I can hardly stand up. We've all done it because I'm like, you know what? Got to be done, and he's worthy, and so I'm going to be here. So there's something to be said about that. Real quickly before I go into these apps, just a couple of things I wanted to hit on. And this, I think, has to do with what I was talking about with just the I don't want to say progression, but just like how that it's opening up different styles of music. And one thing I found out today is that sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of entitlement when it comes to music. And we had a little funny situation happen. We helped with music at a camp last year. And so when I got there, I really felt strange because at my age, I ended up being on the organ because, you can be old and be on the organ. But these kids came in, and I told my husband, now, I'm sorry, Brother Mason. I am so sorry. I did not mean that way. I'm right there with you on the organ, okay? I'm right there with you. So anyway, these kids came in, and they're incredible kids. But I told my husband when I got back to the room, I said, I feel like they brought their talent in their backpack. I thought that they were, because they pulled out their computers, and I do computers. We do pads. We do loops. We do all of that. But here's what I have to say is you better be able to play without it. You better be able to play without it. So I want to make that clear. I'm not against pads. I'm not against loops. Does everybody, just for reference, know what I'm talking about when I say pads and loops? Okay. We use pads. It fills in kind of like a backfill when your slow songs sound empty. Where I learned more to use a pad was as a synthesizer. We just use a synthesizer, and it kind of gives that wee all the way through the song. The good thing is that a pad will change with your chords. Okay, so it's okay. We use it. But like, I want to be able to sit down at that piano and play without a pad. I want to be able, and so that was kind of what was funny that was happening, because my husband is an old school drummer. He learned on hard choir songs, and he loves to play jazz and blues, and he's kind of an old black gospel drummer. And so one of the drummers, he brought in his loops and the clicks in your ears, and I can't hear the click. I can't. And so he asked my husband. He said, "Can you play with a loop?" And my husband said, "Can you play without one?" And so that was interesting. So I feel like that we have maybe, I don't know if I've done it or who has done it, but sometimes I feel like this generation has gotten a great injustice because they are leaning so heavily on technical things that make the band sound so full. And I am not against any of that. Like I said, we use it. We have about 7 drummers, and about 3 of them can play with loops because it's hard to keep your vocals and everybody up with those. So what I told our team was, guess what? We will use them when we can, but I don't want us to feel so dependent upon that we can't play without it. And then the other thing regarding loops and multi-tracks, because you can buy, do any of y'all use multi-tracks? Okay. When you buy it for Wait on the Lord, James Wilson, it's $49. So it makes your band sound amazing, but when you buy it for Wait on the Lord, unless you're using Ableton with it on a computer, you got to can the song. So you got to can it no matter what God's doing, no matter what the Holy Ghost is doing, no matter if Sister Susie's laid on the floor, you got to can that song. Verse, chorus, verse, bridge, bridge, chorus, verse. You're done. Well, guess what? What if God's not done? So that's another thing about using multi-tracks and loops, unless you're all in using Ableton. Do you guys know about Ableton? So, and we do have Ableton, and we use it, but I'm trying to tell our musicians and encourage them, I'm all about doing this, but if I want to pull out His Eyes on the Sparrow, like I did at the last minute last night, you need to be able to play it, because those songs are what our foundation was built upon. Our older people know those songs, and so I want them to be able to play those without all the help that they think that they need. My dad used to say, don't let things be caught, let them be taught. Don't let things be caught, let them be taught. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that we're teaching this generation. I get so frustrated sometimes. I've been in a few practices recently, and I was taught when you open your practice, you open with prayer. People are not talking out and saying, well, that's not the part I heard. I didn't hear it that way. And people are not doing that. And so I was in a practice recently, and it seemed so just lethargic and laid back, and everybody was offering their own opinions. Nobody was listening to the leader. Nobody was like paying attention, and all the kids came in with Starbucks cups, and they were just kind of reared back, and it didn't seem like they were really taking what they were doing seriously. And so, maybe my team thinks I'm a little hardcore, because I'm like, if I'm trying to teach parts, and I'm at the soprano part, and the alto's over here going, I'm like, I will say, hey guys, listen up while I'm teaching their part so they can catch it. And so when we first went to Evansville, sometimes it was like, boy, this practice is going to be a drag. But it's respectful when everything else is going on that the other part people are just not talking, so you can't hear. So when we come in, we open with prayer, we do parts. There's really not a lot of foolishness going on, because we're there. What we do is such an important part of ushering in the presence of God. And I think we've always thought of, we always said Satan was a fallen angel, and he was. But in Ezekiel, there is great heavy reference that Satan was also a musician. Heavy reference for that. And so sometimes I wonder why the enemy works so overtime in our music department. In almost 20 years of being a pastor's wife, I've seen that is most of the time where a lot of your problems is in the music department. And sometimes I think, probably the enemy's just mad because he didn't get to do what he was meant to do. And he got, as one of my boys used to say, he'd tell a story about the devil getting kicked out of heaven. And he'd say, when he was like 2, he said, and he got too big for his britches. And that's what he would tell that story. And so, I'm wondering, because Satan got too big for his britches, that he is not wanting us to do what we're called to do. And so as musicians, as singers, it's the most important job for us is to usher in the presence of God. So like my husband preached last night, if the enemy can cause disunity, if he can cause distraction, if he can cause people to be unprepared, that's a big one. You give somebody a song 2 weeks before, and they come in, they don't know one part about it, they don't know anything about it. I'm like, we put this out 2 weeks ago. You should know it when you get there. So when the enemy can kind of cause all those things going on, the devil's pretty happy about that, because we're not getting to do what he was meant to do. So, and I think that one thing with the not being prepared is just kind of the culture of today. Apathy, Laodicean, lethargic. I deal with that with a lot of my younger people. And I know that my boys are only 12, and honestly, I'm just going to be transparent and tell you they were still in bed when I left this morning. And I don't mean to point anybody out, but that's one thing I've always admired about the Clarks. And even with Alex, you're teaching your kids commitment. You're here. And so this generation, it's not, and because of that, you all have turned out to be incredible singers, incredible musicians, and because of what your parents are instilling in you, the generational thing that's kind of happening today is not happening with you. Your commitment, your talent, you're all in. You're there. You're not just kind of strolling and thinking that you already know the song, so you didn't need to practice. Like, I already know it. I've listened to it. It's on the loop. It's on the multi-track. We're just going to can it. I'm good. Whew. So those things are kind of tough to deal with sometimes. You ever know if you're in the medical field, atrophy? You get muscle atrophy. I had that. I was on bed rest for 4 months with my twins. And after I had them, I couldn't even hold them because I didn't do the proper physical therapy when I was in the hospital. They just didn't really get me up and have me do anything. And I really suffered muscle atrophy because I didn't use my muscles. And so sometimes I feel like that we get that way in music departments and with our talents. And I want to learn, even at playing for 40 years nearly, if somebody can show me a new turnaround or a new riff or a new chord progression, I don't want to be like, well, I know, I've been playing for 40 years, whatever, I got this. I don't want to do that. I want to constantly be learning and exercising my muscles so I don't get so, this atrophy where I'm just like, I've got this, who cares? So with that being said, I will tell you, Sister Joy, how long do I have? 45 minutes. I probably won't go that long, but I'll be close. With that being said, and my age, and I know I keep talking about my age. I just feel really old at 50 sometimes. Ooh. But I've always been the type person that I don't want to just jump on a bandwagon. I don't want to jump on a bandwagon. Like, when something happens, if there's a bandwagon coming down the road, I'm like going to step back, be like, what kind of wheels does it have? What kind of hitch does it have? What kind of, whatever does it have? And I don't want to just be like, I'm just jumping on the bandwagon because everybody else is doing it, and this is what I want to do. So with that being said, it took me a while to get, for the first time anybody told me about two of the things I'm going to show you is On Song and PCO. When they told me about those, I was like, yeah, we're good. We don't, we're good. We don't need that. I was literally making a monthly calendar, a paper calendar of all the schedules and copying them and pasting them, sending them out every month. And so I was like, we're good. We got this. And so I'm just one of those people that I have to really make sure that what somebody's showing me, if I think it's a bandwagon, I just really want to make sure that it's going to impact my life in a good way before I just jump on and, thank you, it's right under here, Brother Mason. Before I just jump on and drag my whole team onto it. So what I'm going to show you first is an app called PCO. I may need your help, Brother Shane. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. What I'm going to show you first is can everybody see this? I'm not sure if I can go this way just a little bit. Uh-oh. Back on? Okay. So this is really good for not only music. If you are, like I said, I was very hesitant, and I understand, like, when I first saw this program, I was kind of overwhelmed. In fact, this is what I said to my husband. I don't think we can do this. It was too technical for me. There's no way I thought I could ever do it. But then when we got it, and we got all of our team members set up on it, honestly, I'm not sure how I could live without it now that I have it, because it just makes things so much easier. Okay, where'd it go? That's my family. That's my husband and my twins. Let me get back on here. I think this may kick off. Okay. PCO does it keep kicking off? It's off. I may have to scoot it back. Okay, we'll see what happens. So is it okay? This is really not, this is about music, but it kind of goes into like whole church planning. So on PCO, we have all of our teams for our church on here. So we have Let me go to a different Sunday because actually tomorrow, because it's Labor Day weekend, we're only having one service. Let me go to this Sunday. Okay. So we have 2 services at on Sunday. So what I do is it allows me to go in here, and it allows me for our 11 o'clock service to schedule. We have just a small praise team at 11. So I have an alto, a soprano, and a tenor. And then that's at our 11 o'clock service. And then at our 12 o'clock service, we have altos, 2 sopranos, 2 altos, 3 sopranos, 2 tenors. Then here's our band at 11, and we don't have an acoustic at 11. So it's on the, it's the organ, bass, and drums basically at 11. Okay, so let me just show you real quick. If you see on here, all the people that are checked in green are the people who have confirmed that they're going to be there. Okay? If they are not, Brother Keith Bales, love him, but he is not confirmed yet that he is going to be there on that Sunday. The good thing about this program, and I don't have time to go into all of it today, but if you are interested in setting it up for your church, I'll be glad to help you with it. It's not hard. The great thing about this is if Brother Gentry Clark has to work, he works at Chick-fil-A. They're not open on Sunday. That's not a good one. You work somewhere else, and you know that you have to work on September 22nd. You go in and you block it out, and you say, I have to work. So I know when I do the schedule that month, I can't schedule you to play the drums that day because you're working. If the Clarks know they're going to be on vacation the last weekend in September, they go in and they block it out on this program. And then I know when I go to schedule them, I can't schedule Brother Clark on the guitar. I can't schedule Sister Clark singing because they're going to be gone. And there's a thing you can put on there, the reason, going to be gone on vacation, going to be working. So this is really great with PCO. When I go to schedule every month. But here's the great thing, if you're pastoring or you're in leadership. Let me go to where it just says all teams. Okay. Every single department in our church is on here. So our ushers are scheduled, our service leaders are scheduled, Sunday school teachers, van driver, greeter. Who's going to preach? Brother Maroney's going to preach that day. Who's going to teach Sunday school? He's actually teaching that day too. So they're all on here. Nursery workers, your nursery workers on here. So this is the nursery worker for actually that day, Christy Wyrick is in nursery both at the 11 and the 12, which is very rare. That must be a day that everybody's going to be gone because usually she puts somebody in there at 11 and somebody in there at 12. So I know that's not music, but this is an incredible tool for your church to schedule people. It gets really difficult if you have, even if you have 6 nursery workers or 5, you can schedule them, and then they know at the beginning of the month who's doing what. So Christy's already gone in and confirmed. So all of those are on here. Our ushers are on here, service leaders. So that's all scheduled. So this is for September. So obviously, I would say by September, August 31st or September 1st, everybody will be confirmed. Now, say, for instance, if you forgot to block out. Brother Mason, he forgot. He's lame brain. He did forget. He's going to be gone on the trip, and he forgot. So then I schedule him to play the organ. He can go in. He's scheduled on the 22nd. He can go in and decline. There's no black mark. Hey, sis, I forgot to block out. I'm not going to be here on the 22nd. That gives me 3 weeks to find somebody else. So PCO is an incredible thing, but I do use it to schedule all of our musicians, and it just gives a really organized effect. Everybody knows. You can go right now. I have people that are going to Disney World in December, and they've already blocked out that they're not going to be there for 10 days in December. And I know. And there's a message on there too they can send to the pastor. Hey, pastor, I'm blocking out for December. We're going to be on family vacation, and it just is a way to let us know. And so this is really a great tool. And I will tell you again, it completely overwhelmed me when my husband's like, "We're using this." And I'm like, really? Because I like my paper calendar a whole lot. Because I'm kind of a paper person. I like paper. And so he was like, I think you'll find. So we do have to clean it up every once in a while. So if I have, a drummer that leaves or moves away, then we have to take them out of the database and add in, another drummer. So you do have to keep that cleaned up, and I have a guy that's in charge of adding people. When you add them into PCO, when you add your musicians and singers into PCO, you have to get their, that's another thing. You have to get their email address and their text. So the other great thing about this is that on, if you're scheduled to sing Sister Joy, you're going to sing soprano on Sunday, September 22nd. On Friday, the 20th, you're going to get a text reminder. You're scheduled to sing Sunday morning. There's practice at 9:30. So everybody gets a text reminder that they're on the schedule. So that's really a great thing, too. Like I said, I've often had hesitation about things like this because I feel like part of me is kind of like the online grocery pickup. I'm like, this is just one more way that we're disconnecting with society. Like, I kind of like just the oldness in me is like, really? If I go to the grocery store, I can talk to somebody about Jesus. So I do still do that, but I pick up my groceries a lot just because of our schedule. So back in the, years and years ago, we had more communication. I had to come to you and say, hey, you're playing the guitar Sunday. This is the songs we're doing. I need you to be here. And so we had this face-to-face communication. And I had a little bit of trouble with that. I felt like it was one more way that we're disconnecting from people and we're not making personal contact. And I do have a little bit of issue with that. But I will tell you that it has made my time I've been less involved with it because it will automatically schedule. Like if it sees that you've been singing already for two Sundays and there's another soprano I haven't used, you can set it where it'll automatically schedule your whole month. So that's really cool. And I will tell you that the time that it has allowed me to be freed up is extra time that I do have to communicate with people because I'm not so stressed out. I make sure my calendar's done. Then my calendar's done, somebody's coming to me and saying, oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm not going to be here. With this, they can block out. So because of the time it has saved me, I found that it has given me more time to go, Sister Roberta, how you doing? How are you doing? I know you had surgery last week. I've been praying for you. And it allows me to give more personal contact because I'm not so wound up with all my paper and my whatever. So I'm not against paper, but it has given me a little bit more time because I'm not so stressed about it. It'll schedule automatically. You can use it for just music. I know this is a music conference, but it's incredible for your ushering, your nursery, your greeters, your van drivers, everybody. Get them on this. This is so funny. Do you know Sister Hawkins? Okay. Sister Hawkins is a 96-year-old lady in our church, and she's been a staple there. She is been a greeter for 30 years. She's a greeter. She's in that foyer, and she's a greeter. She's a greeter, but she only does it like a couple Sundays a month because of her health. She has an iPhone and an iPad. So I was like, I'm not going to make her do that. It's just too technical for her. I'm not going to make her. Well, guess what? Sister Hawkins came to me and said, I heard you got this new program where I can go in on my iPhone and schedule if I'm going to be here for... And I was like, what? This is crazy. So guess what Sister Hawkins did at 95 years old? She confirmed when she was going to be a greeter. And then when she was in the hospital, I got a decline. Sister Hawkins is not going to be here to greet today. I'm in the hospital. And she did that at her age. And I'm like, wow, that was really cool. I was worried I just told our greeter, the person that's over our first impression staff, I said, don't worry about Sister Hawkins. She's probably not going to confirm. She's 95. We'll just work with it as it goes. And I was like already making concessions for her. And she was already ahead of me on the game. So you'll find that your people will have time, like at the beginning, they'll be like, oh, really? I mean, like, we've never done it this way before. I had a few of those, but then after they got to using it, basically the people were like, hey, Sister Maroney, is PCO out yet? Like I had somebody text me on the 25th of August, and they said, hey, is PCO out yet? We just want to see. So with PCO, there's also an option on here, and like I said, I'm going to focus more on song, but there is an option on here that you can also send out your set for the week. So when I send out PCO, it will send out, hey, we're doing Our God Reigns, Wait on the Lord, and Psalms 23. We're doing that Sunday, and you can also send a link, a YouTube link in the PCO. You send your practice times in the PCO. You can send your link for it in the PCO. It is really an incredible tool. It's $5.99, I think, for the app, $5.99. Some of our people just got it on their own, and then some of it we just offered to pay for them to get it. So some of them just went ahead and got it. Okay, so moving from that, if you're interested in that, I'll be glad to help you with it. Like I said, I was super hesitant. I was afraid. I was like, this is way beyond my technicality, whatever. And now that I've done it, it's huge. Okay, so moving on to On Song. And this was something we really tried to get, it to mirror on here because there's so much movement around in On Song that, Brother Shane has been incredible. He did everything he could try to do, and he did get my phone to do it, but it's an issue with On Song. It's not an issue with you all. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about On Song, and then I'm going to turn it around where you can see it. So I know that this will be a little awkward, but anyway, here it is. On Song is a program that I use for all of my songs, and here's what happened here's how I started using On Song. When I was pregnant with my twins, expecting my twins, I had a very hard time. I went through a couple surgeries. I had already lost 4 babies. I had miscarriages. And so the doctor put me on complete bed rest. Well, if you know me, I am a busy bee. I'm like, I can't stand to be down. I was losing my mind doing nothing. So I had literally a binder, 2 of them. I had 2 binders that were probably that thick, that were full of all of the music and lead sheets that I had collected over the years. Everything from back Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to everything. I had them. And so a friend of mine said, you need to get all these converted and you can carry them all around on this. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do it. Again, I'm just old school like that. I don't know. I like feeling those binder papers and holding the binder and carrying it and opening it up. I loved all that. And so I was very hesitant about doing it. And again, once I did it, I was like, where has this been all my life? I really wish I would have done it earlier. So during the 4 months that I was on bed rest in my bed, I put over 450 songs into On Song. Now, we are 3 iPads later because my boys are 12. So I started out with like a Generation 1, I think. What is that, the first thing on my Generation 1 iPad? Okay, that's what I started out with. And I put all the songs in there, and then I kept doing the updates and all that on it. And now this is an iPad Pro, but I've, three iPad generations later, I have kept all the songs in Dropbox. How many of you use Dropbox? Okay, so I put all the songs in Dropbox, and then I just update that every once in a while. We just learned a new song last week, Glorious Day. And that song is now in On Song, but it's also updated to Dropbox so that if this were to crash tomorrow, I would have dropped it in the lake, I would still have all my songs. So here's a couple of things. That's not a good first one. I just want to let y'all know that I sang that song at a wedding. You see it? The first song is When a Man Loves a Woman. Sorry. I had to play that. And Craig Hedges sang it at a wedding. And so it's in my On Song. We don't sing that really on Sunday. It's not a good one. Okay, so here's the songs that I put in here. And I'm going to try to find one. Let me go real quick to... I don't have my glasses on. I need my glasses. Does anybody... It's a black purse. You can just bring me the black MK purse you find. I know. Okay, so let me find a song that I've just added. Okay, Throne Room song. Does anybody do that yet? Throne Room? Everybody heard that song? That's a relatively new song. Yes, thank you. I do pretty good unless I get to reading. There are a few ways that you can add songs. Now, I will tell you, and I may have Brother Mason go to the piano just in a couple minutes and have you call off chords to me and show you guys how to enter them. This song in particular, and we were talking about this last night, paid sites are better. And if you were here last night, you know that. Because here's what happened. I was debating on what to sing at altar call because of what my husband preached. And I was like, man, I really want to do, I need you, you need me, we're all a part of God's body. So I went from this place and I was like, I want to do that one. While I'm up here on the iPad connected to my Wi-Fi on my phone, and I couldn't find it. I went to try to do Praise Charts, which is a paid site, and you get all lead sheets for $2.50. But last week, our debit card got compromised, so I had not gone in yet to change my debit card. on Praise Charts. So I'm up there at the keyboard trying to download I Need You to Survive, and it's like, oh, it's the wrong card, whatever. So I get out and I just go to Ultimate Guitar real quick, which is a free site to download stuff. And I did, and guess what? I'm up there trying to play it. Sister Clark's like, she's closing her eyes and she's like this, and the chords were horrendous. They were all wrong. So that's the difference between a paid site and a free site. Praise Charts, you can buy any lead sheet for $2.50, and it's pretty much going to be right, wouldn't you say? Pretty legit. It's going to be on point. Ultimate Guitar, you got these probably 16, 17-year-old guys on there, and they're just strumming along. Yeah, that D sounds good there. That E sounds good there. And so sometimes when I download from Ultimate Guitar, it's not right. Praise Charts is probably my best go-to for downloading songs, and sometimes I do it the old-fashioned way where I sit down at the keyboard, type my lyrics on song, and then I go back and fill in the chords. Throne Room, though, in particular, I downloaded this from Praise Charts. So you go to Praise Charts, and you're just going to have you search the song, Throne Room song, and it comes up, and then you will click it. If you want to make notes, I'm sorry I can't mirror it on here, but it will ask you if you want to buy it. $2.50. You buy it, and then it gives you the option. Send a Dropbox, send it on song, email it, whatever to you. I always choose send it to my on song because I can import it to Dropbox after I get it in my on song. So then I open my on song, and it says, would you like to import Throne Room now? And I just push yes, and it puts it right in this little database of songs. Now I've got Throne Room. Here's the good thing about this, and I hope you can see this. There are a bunch of things you can do once you get in. Okay, so if you want to edit it, say there is one chord that's not right, you just push the pencil to edit it, and it lets you go to the editing, and you can change this E flat to a flat if you want. That don't sound right there. I don't like the way that sounds there. So you go into the pencil, and you can edit it. Here's something that's great as well. If you go into this, you can change the key. I don't like to play in D flat. We're going to do this song in C. I mean, I do play in D flat, but I don't really like to. So you just push a button. Watch this. It's in D flat now. Bada bam. It's in now C. So it transposes it automatically. Okay? Right. And because years and years ago, I will share with you and be transparent. Because I learned to play in a smaller church and I had a keyboard, I really did. I did myself a great injustice, and I transposed a lot. I really did. And I do it now probably about 4 or 5 times a year. But our musicians in Evansville they're good musicians, and they have pushed me to be better. And so I don't really transpose like I used to. I do it here. So I can just push a button. No, I don't like it in C either. I want it to be in B flat. So now it's in B flat. The only part about that, if you're playing it for somebody different, I generally like to go back and make sure that I put it in the right key. It's in D flat. Okay, so the other thing you can do too, you can go down here to Format. Okay, and I don't like yellow highlight. I want to highlight it in blue. I like UK. So you're going to go down to Format at the bottom, and that will put you where you can highlight in any color. Say you're half blind like me, and you want your chords to be bigger. You can take those up to 15 point, 16 point, 18 point. You can make your chords bigger where it says chords. I'm going to take those back down to... Anyway, you can make them as big as you want. You can make those chords as big as you want. So that's on the Format. Yeah. And also, if you want to make the chords bigger, you just take your point up. Okay, here's something else that's fun about this. Because it's in here, I want to put a sticky... Okay, first of all, I'm gonna go to the little top left corner where there's a sticky note. There's a sticky, and then push that, and then it's going to put sticky note. Okay? Then I can go here and type repeat, bridge, 2 times. Or whatever. I'm just making up a thing to put in there. Repeat, bridge. Okay, then you go. It's not even spelled right. Okay, you've got a little note on there. It's a little sticky note. Then if you want to next time, you can delete that note. Delete. Also, you can, if you want to do a sticky note and you want to, like there's a part that you want to, like you guys did on I don't remember what song it was last night, where you did those cuts. Okay, so if you want to do that, my sign for cut is like an asterisk. So if you want to cut right here on in all of the heavens. Okay, I'm going to go meh. There's an asterisk there. It means cut. Okay, so that's what my sign is. So I use that a lot just to make little notes. You can erase it with the eraser. Or you can write, whatever. You can write repeat on there or anything. Okay, say for instance, I want to add a new song. You go back to your song list, which is all songs. And then you're going to push the add button, which would make sense at the bottom. Add. And then go to new song. And it always gives you this template. This is like a template you can use. But basically, it makes you put the song title, the artist, the key, and then it makes you do it in a certain order, like verse, chorus, bridge. This template does. So what I just do is, it's not letting me. I select all and delete that because I don't really want to do that. So here's what I'm going to do real quick. How about we do this, since you're kind of learning how to use it, and well, you are too. Sister Wagner, you can do this. It's easy. Hit me C on the keyboard. And then Joy, I'm going to have you do this. I'm adding a new song. If you can come up here, yeah. So we're going to go back now. We're done, okay? And we're going to go back to, let's start all over. Go back to your song list if you want to do it. We're in our song list now. To add a new song, you're going to push add new song. I'm going to take this version out because I don't want, my fingers must be sweaty. There, select all. Thank you. Delete. Now, what Sister Joy is going to do, I'm going to have her actually add a song. Just put in the lyrics to Here I Am to Worship. Okay, so this is what happens, like all of them, like just the chorus. This is what happens if you can't find a song on praise charts. For instance, none of James Wilson's new songs are going to be on praise charts. Who's some of those other apostolic artists right now that are writing songs? I don't know. Court Chavis has written some. But generally, the apostolic artists, sadly enough, and James Wilson has written some incredible stuff lately, but his stuff is not going to be on praise charts. It's not going to be. And sometimes you really, like the paid sites, like I said, are better, but you can find, sometimes I will just go and put, Here I Am to Worship chords. And then you can copy and paste that. Since it's an older song, you can copy and paste that and copy and paste it right into where she is right now. Like, we all know how to copy and paste. So you just go to that new song, add, and you can copy and paste it right into here right now. So, but if you can't, you're absolutely in a bind and you can't find the chords anywhere, then you have to make your own, which we've all done, and we've done it many times. So she is typing, and then I want to tell you, just hit a C. Okay. So just tell me when you're, I don't mean to rush you. I'm sorry. You're doing amazing. Were you like 95 words a minute there or something? Okay, so this is what happens when you want to add your own song. And I had to do that on, well, I will tell you that all of James Wilson's stuff is on his website. It's jameselliswilsonmusic.com, and they're $2.99. So all of his stuff, all of Charity Gale's stuff is on her website. We've been doing a lot of Charity Gale stuff. We do Divine Exchange, Amen, New Name Written in Glory. We do those, and all of those are on her website. They're off for like $2 or $3. Okay, so Miss Joy, what you're going to do is, you just added that in there. Uh-oh. Okay, go back and double space at the top, and then double space each line. So you're going to double space at the top, and then double space each line. That gives room for your chords, for you to put your chords in. Okay, so do a C. You're going to start on Here I Am, C. Here I am to worship, C. Here I am to G over B. G over B. Bow down. Back to C, right? Okay, she's going to, here I am to worship, here I am to, it's G over B on bow down. Here I am to say, try D minor there. Oh, that's not right. Not the keyboard. Whatever you did was right. Say, G. Okay, and then God is going to be on F. Okay, so she can stop playing there. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so she has just successfully added a new song. So then you're done. Here's your new song. Here I am to worship. If you want to change the key, chords, you go down to push the little thing that looks like the mixing board at the top. Then you go down to where it says chords, and I want to put it in F. You put it in F, and then you can go down again to format. You can make it yellow. You can make it bold. So you've got all your things in there you can do. I just made it bold. So that's how you add a new song. And it may seem overwhelming, but it's really not. It's pretty easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's how you add a new song. The good thing is today that comes with all of this, some people being, lazy and having their atrophy, there are good resources out there. So a lot of my songs that I do, there's always tutorials for them. Always. On YouTube, there's a tutorial for almost any song out there. Again, maybe not some of the apostolic artists, but we just did, I'm trying to think what we just did. Just say, for instance, even an old one, Chainbreaker. Okay? We did that, and we taught that to our kids team that plays. And I sent the tutorial links to everybody. So there was a tutorial link for guitars. There was a tutorial link for keyboard player. There was a drum tutorial. It's all on YouTube. So those tutorials are out there, and you can send them. So there's great resources out there for this. And that doesn't really have anything to do with OnSong, but you can send those links through PCO. You can send the YouTube links through PCO as well. That's a great thing about it. When you do your worship set on PCO, you can just send the links right through those. Okay, so this is a little bit about OnSong. If you want to email this to your entire team, you're just going to do the little envelope that has the arrow. You're going to email it, and then it's going to ask you, do you want to send this as a PDF, or do you want to send this in OnSong? For all my team members that have OnSong, obviously I send it in OnSong. And then you just put their email in it and it attaches it right there. I will tell you, obviously they all have OnSong. But if you ever have to send it to anyone as a PDF file, they can't make those edits to it. So you can't change the keys. You can't change the highlighting. So if you ever send it to somebody as a PDF, there's no way they can change it. So you want to send it, if they have OnSong, send it to OnSong. One other good feature about this, and I don't have the capability to do it right now, I turn the pages for the entire team with my pedal. So if they have OnSong on their iPad, which all of our guitar players have an iPad. Sister Bear has an iPad. So if she's playing the organ, she has an iPad. So the pedal that I have is synced with this, my pedal on my keyboard. And I can either switch. Okay, let me do this real quick. Let me get to a set. I'm going to go to my set for Sunday and show you real quick. Here's my set for this Sunday, September 1st. I've already built it. And we are doing Open Up the Heavens, In Jesus' Name, and Amen by Charity Gill. That's what we're doing this Sunday. And so when I'm done with Open Up the Heavens, you can do it. Brother Mason was mentioning this. You can do this and turn the page to the next song. Or if you don't want to get your hands free, I bought the pedal that I just click it one time and it turns the pages for all of them. I do have a couple of guitars that I want to turn my own page. And that's fine. If they want to turn their own page, they just turn it off. But there's some, like Sister Bear's well, I just rather you turn it. So that's what she does. I turn her page because we know where we are at the same time. You can just if you're playing, it's pretty easy. You just go like that, and it swipes it. Well, I said it did. There. I really had that happen. So you can just swipe it when you get to the next song. I think my hands are sweaty. That's why they're doing this. You just swipe to the next page. With the pedal, you just click it, and it'll turn the page automatically. You can also, this has the thing on it where I can beam, like instead of emailing, say, for instance, we had this conversation last night. We never really practice our altar songs, which I know is not great, but we just sing a song that we pretty much already know. So last Sunday it happened, whatever my husband was preaching, I wanted to sing Waymaker. And everybody just knows, like, I try not to make it a habit of texting in church, but if we're communicating about songs for altar, that's what we do. And so they leave their iPads by them, and so toward the end of his message, I just, instead of emailing it to them, you can beam them. I just beam them all Waymaker, and I'm like, we'll do this for altar. So that, and then when they all had it, when we got up there, so that was good. So I know this seems overwhelming. If any of you are interested in using it in your church as music directors or whatever, I'd be glad to get with you. I don't know everything about OnSong, but I have been using it for 12 years. So and it is constantly doing things that make it better. So when you download when you do the updates, there may be a different feature on there. Oh, guess what? This week it's going to serve me breakfast. Like, not really, but it's going to do something that's going to make your life easier. So it'll tell you what the update is. The new feature on the update is now that you can, connect something with your talkback mic and do whatever. So, and we are just now venturing into that. A talkback mic, which I've not used before, but we're just now venturing into that. So with every update on OnSong, it does do something to make your life a little bit easier. So OnSong is a little bit more of an expensive app. It's $29, but literally, I still have my binder, y'all. 2 of them. It's up in my closet, and I still have them. But I found when I'm traveling or when I'm doing whatever, it just is really so much easier just to take this and go. Before Sunday, I send this to my sound guys, the media, the AV guys. I send it to the entire team, and when they get up, they have it and they're ready to go. So 2 tools that I would say right now that I really, really lean on musically are PCO and OnSong. PCO, I really hadn't planned on talking about that today, but it is amazing. Even a couple years ago, I was privileged to just get to sing praise team on the general conference team, and they used PCO. They just had a group on PCO. It was called General Conference, and we got all the updates on there on practice times and what the songs were and who was singing and all that. And like, I already had it, so I didn't have to do anything, and I already knew how to use it. So that was great. But if you're interested in using PCO or OnSong, just ask me questions. I don't know how long I've gone, but I'm about done. I think maybe 30 minutes. Yeah. So, alrighty, thank you guys. Let's give Sister Joy a hand. She does a great job putting this conference together, and she has a heart for music. I can tell that she has a heart for music. So we appreciate that, Sister Joy.
That was so informational. No. Yeah, it was amazing. I am not really a musician, but still, just that's even helpful, just from a music director's standpoint, if I can send out information so everybody's on the same page. All right, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, so if you need to go to the restroom, get a drink or whatever, and then we're going to come right back. So at, 10:35, we'll get started again. All right? Thank you.
Test one, test.
we're going to go ahead and get started again. Get Brother Mason up here. How many of you were here last year during the day services? Brother Mason blew my mind. Like, I was just so impressed. And so as soon as he was finished, I was like, we are definitely having him speak again next year and cover pretty much that same subject. I'm sure he will expound a little further this year, but this information it's so practical and it's so needed across the board. It's not just about music. It's about, if you work with people at all, you need to know this information. So I'm very thankful that he's here, and their family has been such a huge support of our music conference for the last several years, and I'm so thankful for them. So let's get with Brother Mason as he comes and minister to us today.
And let's give the Lord a good hand praise this morning. It is a privilege to be here today. How many love music conference? Give thanks to our host pastor and Sister Wagner this morning. Love and appreciate them. It's always good to see them. The Clarks, the Roney family. Really, really thoroughly enjoyed that word last night. We heard last night from God on many different levels. And I will tell you that I was just very thankful last night for what he preached, not only as an individual Christian, but as a leader in the church, as a leader in society. I think he spoke to us some of the beginning fundamentals that are necessary to be a good leader. And that's to have unity, avoid division. And what I'm going to talk to you about this morning, I prayerfully hope today will somehow piggyback onto the back of what he spoke last night, and how I kind of look at this. And I know I'm a little weird and strange, and I've been called worse than that a time or two. But I think he really dealt with us very intimately last night in a spiritual framework. And I'm going to try to come in behind that and really talk practical stuff. Leadership is very spiritual. It is laced throughout the Word of God, but it is very practical as well. There are some things that we just need to know. And I believe this morning, I've never heard anybody say this, so this is just me, so if you disagree, you can just blame me. But I believe if repentance, baptism in Jesus' name, and receiving the infilling of the Holy Ghost, if that was all we needed, I believe the Bible would stop at the book of Acts. But there's more after that. There's quite a bit more after that, and it's teaching, it's education, it's how to be a Christian, how to live, how to walk, how to influence the people around us, and all of those are fundamental things that are associated with leadership. And my mind right now is going from A to Z, because leadership is such a broad subject and I have such a passion for it. So I'm going to do my best to stay to my framework here so I can stay in my time frame, all right? But what I'm talking about today is becoming a leader worth following, because we have a severe, desperate need of good leadership in society today. If you don't believe that, just turn the news on and check out I don't care which news station you choose. You can see real quick that we are in need of good leadership. Leadership has been defined by several experts as influence, nothing more, nothing less. But what we often fail to recognize is the depth of details and requirements that make up good influence. Anybody can influence. Anybody. Charles Manson can influence. Satan can influence. So we would be ill-advised this morning to believe that influence in and of itself is all that there is. It has to be the right influence. And the platform of leadership that I teach, the leadership model that I teach, and I'll give you a snapshot of that here in a little bit, what I have been taught and what I am still learning, still a student of, and hope to be for the rest of my life, is built on the premise of the leader becoming. Because what society has done for some reason over the last several decades, we have gotten to the place in society to believe that if there's a problem in a team, or if there's a problem in a business or in a church or whatever, that the problem is always the people's fault and the leader is somehow on some kind of pedestal. And that's a little bit of a soapbox topic for me this morning, and I'll avoid going too far with it. But leaders are not exempt. So the model of leadership that I teach to our staff at church, that I teach to my staff at my company, this model of leadership is built on the premise that everything starts and begins with the leader. If you don't like what your team is doing, look at yourself, not them. And it's a little difficult, and it's different than societal teaching, and it's often different from what our friends and our families like to believe. But the leader is the one that is responsible for the results. Okay? So I posted this on Facebook a few years ago. It actually came up in my memories this morning, and I was looking at my daily news. And I was inspired by this a few years ago, and I wrote this, and I think it's applicable to leadership. Faithfulness is not something you do because you have a title or something important to do. Faithfulness is a character trait that you possess even when your name is not mentioned. Good leaders have character first, then they lead, not the other way around. I have people that I interview for jobs and for promotions at my company, and I have had people tell me before, well, why are you interested in this job? Well, because I think I can do it. Well, what makes you think that? Well, if you give me a chance, I'll prove it. It don't work that way. You possess the qualities, you demonstrate the qualities first, and then you move into some type, because you don't have to have a title to be a leader. So this morning, I hope is, and I believe is applicable to musicians, singers, pastors, pastoral teams, companies, and even individuals. You don't even have to check mark the box on those titles for this to be applicable to you, because it's all about leading yourself. And when we start to lead ourselves first, then I think that we will begin to embody the traits of leadership better, to where God can move in us better. And He can move through us. Influence is important. Unfortunately, it can be good or it can be bad. And we cannot afford to leave leadership to chance. Good leadership requires intentionality. You have to do it on purpose. You have to think about it. And you have to be conscious about it. If you're not, then you won't be a good leader. I don't want to get in everybody's grill like this early on a Saturday morning, but leadership is challenging. And Sister Maroney said it probably a little nicer than what I say it whenever she talked about, and I don't remember the exact words she used, but she used the word entitlement in reference to musicians. And it's not just musicians, but since we're at a music conference, I'll pause here and say that we definitely do have a problem with entitlement in musicians and singers throughout the Apostolic Church. We have for years. And I have said for years that musicians and singers and I'm not anti-apostolic today, I don't want anybody to misunderstand me, but I have said for years that musicians and singers in the Apostolic Church, because we have the most talented there is, and I believe that, but we also have some of the biggest egos that exist, which makes me also reflect back on Satan, or Lucifer, being a musician. What was his real problem? It was his self. I belong here. I deserve this. And this gets into the core fabric of leadership if we're not careful. And again, I don't want to be misunderstood this morning. But being, and we've got two pastors that I know of at least here this morning. How many else is in any other form of leadership role in your church? All right, so several. So I grew up in a pastor's home. My father-in-law is our bishop. My brother-in-law is my pastor. I'm the administrative pastor. So pastor's in our DNA. All right, so I am not speaking against the ministry this morning, but I do want to pause and make a practical reflection here, because I've seen this in my lifetime, to where that people, men and even women, have abused spiritual authority to the point that they think that they're up here because of their title. And it doesn't matter what they say, you listen. Now, I know there's a fabric of respect and submission. I'm just lay that aside for a second. As a leader, if we want to be effective, we have to get off the robe of entitlement for ourselves based on who we are. I just have to learn how to be real with people. And Sister Wagner, that means as a leader, I am the top operations leader in America in my company. And as that leader, that means I have to learn how to watch my behavior. I have to watch my conduct. I have to make sure I am walking the talk. Or I can never expect the people to follow me if I'm not. And it also means when I mess up, because I do trip over myself. It means when I mess up, I have to be big enough to kneel before someone symbolically and say, you know what, I messed up the other day. I had an attitude with you and I'm sorry. But we have lost. And if I'm wrong and you teach and you feel differently in your church, your pastor's right and I'm wrong. Okay? But for some reason, I am afraid that in the apostolic church, we have lost this belief that leaders need to be real. Because we've got to protect our image. We've got to protect spiritual authority. We've got to protect everything. Because if I'm real with you and I tell you I'm sorry because I messed up, then you're no longer going to submit to my authority. That's wrong. All right? We have to learn as leaders to be intentional and be real and to become the leader worth following. It's a journey, folks. You don't take a class and graduate with a certificate and come away and say, hey, I'm a leader. It is an absolute lifetime journey, and if you're not committed to the journey, you will struggle for the rest of your life. Leadership is not for the weak. Sister Joy, give me a 10-minute warning, if you will. All right? Because I don't want to be here till lunchtime. It's not what everybody signed up for. But leadership is not for the weak. Because leadership requires tough decisions. It requires consistency. Let me tell you something, folks. Consistency is not easy. Consistency means whenever someone you like on your team does something, you have to be able to challenge that and handle that just as much as you are ready to stomp when it's somebody on your team that you like less. And if we're real with ourselves today, I realize that the Spirit does a whole lot of stuff for us, and whenever we're hugging and crying in an altar, we love everybody. But whenever it's dismissed and we're in the parking lot, we come back to nature a little bit. And if we're real with each other, there are people that we like more, and there are people that we will associate with less. And if both of those are on your team, you have to be consistent. So prepare this morning for a few small moments to take a journey with me on leadership. John F. Kennedy, if you'll take me. Sister Katie, thank you for your help this morning. If you'll take me to the next slide, I apologize. I forgot my clicker. I like to have the remote in my hand. But John F. Kennedy said, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. I don't think anybody could say it better. As a leader, I think Dr. Maxwell, I'm a big Maxwell reader. I think he is the one that authored the statement that leaders are readers. But the spirit behind that is just simply leaders continue to educate themselves. Leaders continue to learn. That's what we're here today to do. Leaders continue to polish their craft, because true leadership is a craft. You can't do leadership part-time. Somebody say amen. The book of Hebrews, since we are in a spiritual context this morning, I want to bring us to the Word of God. The book of Hebrews says in chapter 13 and verse number 7, I want to read it in the King James first, and then I'm going to touch on a couple of other versions for reference. But 13 and 7 in Hebrews says, "Remember them which have the rule over you, who have spoken unto you the word of God, whose faith follow, considering the end of their conversation." As a child growing up in the apostolic church, growing up in a ministry family, I cannot tell you the number of times that I have heard people aggravated with other people, and I have heard them privately quote, "Remember them that have the rule over you." Some of us have probably said it. When you have people that don't want to submit and you have people that aggravate you, understand me this morning. I am not saying that every problem on a team is the leader's fault. I am not saying that every person you have in your church that won't submit is the pastor's fault. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the leader possesses a very particular responsibility on how they handle that. Because the leader's job is to influence that behavior. And how we deal with ourselves first is what is predicated on the success of how we get them on board with what we're doing. So let's look at Hebrews 13:7. I'm going to read it to you in the Message version this morning. It says, "Appreciate your pastoral leaders who gave you the word of God. Take a look at the way they live and let their faithfulness instruct you as well as their truthfulness." NIV version says, "Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Now that's a pretty good instruction for followers. But that outlays and lines out the level of responsibility that is placed on the shoulders of the leaders. What it simply means, if I could just kind of put it in Mason commentary, chapter 5, clause 1, is that the people that you are leading, that the Bible is telling them to watch you, to imitate you. Lord, that gets deep. To look at the way you live and to let your faithfulness instruct you. Now, I'll tell you as a leader, I'll tell you when I get the most aggravated is when I know that my faithfulness should be instructing someone else differently and they don't follow. Right? When I know I am at church on time, and if my pastor requires me to be there 30 minutes early and I'm there and I have other leaders on staff who are late and they're not following my model pattern of behavior, that's when I as a leader start having my challenge. And how I handle, here's the thing that we miss in society teaching. We want to stop right there, drop the gauntlet, behead them, and just say, "Done with you." We don't say it that way, but that's really what we're kind of thinking. But the truth of the matter is as a leader, how I handle myself in those situations determines the outcome of that person. Maybe they don't need to be in leadership, but how I handle, and again, I'm referring to this now in a church spiritual context, how I handle that person in their leadership role, how I handle their demotion, how I handle their future, may help predicate whether or not they stay saved. It's very tricky. I just made a comment to my pastor recently, and I told him, I said, I'm aggravated about a few things, and I just did a little bit of venting over some things, leader to leader. I said, but I will admit to you, one reason why I'm aggravated is because on the job in my organization, I have a very clear, I've got an open runway, because that's my job. And I know exactly what to do, and I know why I need to do it, and I do it. But people's souls aren't at stake. Now, their paychecks are, so I take it very seriously. There are things at stake, but it's not eternity. In the church as a leader, I'm more cautious But I have to somehow balance that caution with consistency. Because if I expect it from person 1, I have to also expect it from person 30. A leader cannot operate with favorites. So, leadership. If you'll take me to the next slide, Sister Katie, and thank you for following along with me there and tracking with me. I appreciate that. But this kind of outlines the leadership training modules that I have been taught, that I have embraced, and that I teach. I teach this to my company. I teach it to our staff at church. And I'll go through this just real quick, and I'll tell you why I'm showing you this. But best fit experience, there's an interlayment of psychology of personality with leadership that I find very important. So I operate off of the Myers-Briggs concept. 5 voices is also connected to that, but everybody has a voice that they primarily speak, and they're listed there for you, even though it might not make sense. But then 5 gears is how to be present and productive when there's never enough time, and that allows us a framework on how to engage with each other better. Maximizing influence, cracking the communication code, predictive learning behaviors, that walks you through your personality and what stress triggers you have and what you can do to help avoid those. Then multiplication, taking what you have and multiplying it. And all of this is actually, it comes from a secular organization, but they are believers. They're not apostolic, but they are believers, and they built all of this framework basically off of the Word of God. In the secular environment, they don't advertise that, but it's an underlayment to all of this. So multiplication, apprenticeship, and coaching. Sister Katie, if you'll take me to the next slide. Leaders define culture, and here's why I showed you all of that training stuff. That comes up to 52 hours of training. And that's just the classroom stuff. All right? My point is, you can start with leadership, and you can learn until you die. There's no stopping point. All right? But there is plenty of good content to learn and adapt as a leader, because leadership, again, is influence. So I need to understand, how do I best influence those that are around me? It takes dedicated practice. Repetition is the mother of all mastery. And our staff at church hears me say things over and over and over again. You're going to see at least one slide. I looked at last year's content. You're going to see one slide today that if you were here last year, you may recognize. So the difficulty here is we're touching it once a year. All right? So don't think that you're going to come away. I do not have the magic bullet, so I cannot empower you to come away today and be John Maxwell. All right? But it takes effort. It takes follow-up. It takes dedication. Leadership must be your lifestyle if you're going to be effective. If you are a leader only because you have a title, then you are going to struggle in your effectivity. So inconsistent leadership creates, we've already touched on it a little bit, but it creates drama, it creates stress and anxiety, it creates a reduction in morale. If leadership was easy, everyone would do it. Guess who gets the blame most of the time? If you follow NFL, on most occasions in football, who gets fired first, the player or the coach? Coach. Because the expectations are higher for the coach than they are the player. The player's job is to just play. Everybody knows they're going to have a bad day. The coach's job is to get results. Now, in a practical concept, in my industry and in my business, that's not uncommon. As a top leader in my company, if I don't provide results, guess what? I'm not going to have a job. So, and it don't matter if people like me or not. They need results. I wonder how God looks at leaders. And when I wonder about that, I get a little nervous. And then I thank God for mercy. Because if he was the commissioner, or if he was the stadium owner or the team owner, he might just cut the coach. Thank God he doesn't always do that. But the road to becoming a leader worth following starts with you. It doesn't start with the team. Leaders define culture. Sub-leaders define subculture. If you don't like the culture on your team, guess who you look at? Not the person on your team that you think is the poison egg. You might be right, but your job is to influence and try to salvage the poison egg. This is what I tell my team at work. If you don't like what's going on your team, look at yourself. Told you, leadership is not easy. Leaders define culture. It all starts at the top. Church leaders are often, now this might be the most difficult statement I make this morning, and again, if your pastor says differently, he's right, I'm wrong. But I have come to believe that church leaders are more difficult to lead than secular leaders. Why is it? Now, we're in an apostolic environment this morning, so let me just be a little bit transparent with you. Why is it that we somehow have an environment that fosters in our congregations? Maybe it's seasonal, I don't know. But why is it that we think because we've got the Holy Ghost and we talk in tongues that we know everything there is to know? Why is it that we think that baptism in Jesus' name, and I'm not anti-salvation, please understand me this morning, but again, I need more than just that's just my birth certificate. I have to learn how to crawl, walk, run, kneel, stand, sit. So I need instruction. So the leader cannot escape to a place that they cannot be held accountable for their actions and the reactions that occur with those. I was youth pastor in our church for 22 years, and what I am most famous for saying is one very simple statement: choices matter. And it matters in leadership. What you say, how you conduct yourself, what you do. If you set expectations for your people, set the same expectations for yourself. You're not exempt just because you have a title. All right, next slide, Sister Katie. So I showed you this last year, but this is built on the premise of knowing yourself to lead yourself. And I didn't provide printouts. I have permission to use the content. I don't necessarily have permission to publish it and to hand it out, but I can show it. But know yourself to lead yourself. Everybody, it starts at the bottom of the infinity loop, but everybody has tendencies. That has to do with the psychology, the personality. Everybody's born and hardwired with a particular approach in a particular way. Those tendencies are not always good. Blame it on Adam and Eve if it makes you feel better. But those tendencies are not always what people need in a leader. And let me pause. How am I doing on time? Let me pause for a quick commercial break here. As leaders, you need to allow yourself the flexibility and the latitude to make a mistake. I'm not necessarily even talking about sin, okay? I'm just talking about mistakes in leaders. You need to stop believing that you have to be perfect. It's too much pressure, it's impractical, and it'll never happen. I mess up. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. I mess up. I trip all over myself. I let my personality shine sometimes, and that's not always the right thing to do. And no matter how much I learn, I'm still not a morning person. So I've had to learn. I've got close to 100 people at my company that I'm responsible for. And if I'm walking through the plant earlier than normal, And people are, and I have learned that people need me to say good morning. Now, as a Myers-Briggs classified ESTJ, if you know anything about what that means, you'll understand. I could care less. In my personal, I don't want to cause anybody to lose faith in me this morning, but just me, as a person, as Jerry Mason, I could care less about saying good morning at 8:30 in the day. Really? But I have received feedback over the years as leaders. People say, well, Jerry, you walk through the factory and you don't ever talk to anybody. Is it really that important to them? Yeah. They need me to say good morning. So you know what I do? I fake it. I walk through, I smile, it hurts. You know, they say it takes fewer muscles to smile than it does to frown, but at 8:30 in the morning when I'm smiling, it's painful. Because it's not natural for me. My wife, she will hop, it don't matter if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, she hops up, she's dressed in 2 minutes, and she's whistling. And I'm like, would you please be quiet? But that's a tendency of mine. All right, I'll use myself as an example. So let me walk you through this real quick. Everybody has tendencies. Everybody has patterns of behavior. Those tendencies and patterns of behavior lead to actions. And actions have consequences. And those consequences shape your reality. So the point here is know yourself to lead yourself. If you don't like your reality, look at the consequences you're facing. Walk it backwards. And if you don't like the consequences, look at your actions. Whose problem are your actions? Is it your team's problem? No, it's yours. So I'll use myself as an example on the Good Morning America model here. All right, my tendency is to, and I'm extroverted, but I don't want to talk in the morning. I got to wake up first. So at 8:30 in the morning, my tendency is to stay closed off. I go into my introversion, which is not healthy. And I'm not talking to people. So that's my tendency. I recognize the tendency and I recognize the reality it shapes is it offends my team. And the reason why I should care about that, because by nature I don't, but as a leader, the reason I should care about that is because of influence. And if I expect to influence them at 2 p.m. when I've woke up and I forgot about the fact that I ignored them at 8:30, and at 2 o'clock I can't figure out why they won't jump on board and buy in, it's because of me. So I look at my tendencies. All right, what actions or what patterns or filters of behavior can I put in place that are different? I can just simply smile no matter how bad it hurts and say, good morning. How are you today? And I don't say it like that all the time because it really comes out fake and then they can sniff that out too. Sometimes it's just a, hey, good morning. And my team that is closest to me knows me and they understand me. And you know what? They appreciate the effort. Even when it's been a late night the night before and it's an early morning today and we're hard at it and we're stressed and we're overworked, even when I just grind out morning, leave out the good, just morning, they still appreciate the effort. Because leaders define culture. And if I want my people to respect me, I respect them. And if I want their people to respect them, they have to respect me. You model behavior in front of people. What you model and what you walk is more important than what you talk. More important. So this matters. Let's move on. Maybe, can everybody see this okay? All right, so there's 3 circles here. On the top left is your IQ. It's your intelligence factor. It's what you're born with. It's what God gave you. It usually just is, at its raw measurement, it just is what it is. You can learn, but the ability and capacity to learn is your IQ. All right, so that is pretty well set for the most part. On the right is emotional intelligence or emotional connectivity. It's become a popular buzzword in the last 5 to 10 years. Very important, not nullifying that at all. It's important that I understand you so that I can connect with you. But the bottom, the PQ here, is self-awareness. So it is just as important in equal third parts. It is just as important as my intelligence, and it's just as important as my ability to connect with you, that I understand myself. So at the middle of that is the core. So the object for the leader is to strengthen the core. All right? Now, I am not the model example for talking about core exercises physically, all right? But we understand what the core does for us. It gives us stability, and it gives us strength in so many ways, all right? And the weaker your core, the more you feel it in your back, in your legs, in your arms, in your whole body. It affects you. So the point for the leader here is to strengthen the core. How do I strengthen that? I strengthen that through learning. I strengthen that through understanding you, and I also strengthen that through self-awareness. What are my tendencies? What are my behavior patterns? If you'll take us to the next slide, Sister Katie. This is a very busy slide. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but what I really want to point out, the circles are in the same order. At the bottom, you see that the circles are different sizes. Okay? On the bottom left set of circles, your IQ is smaller, and your emotional intelligence and your self-awareness are larger than IQ, and you're closer to the goal line. On the middle set, and this is what I really want to focus on here, your IQ is larger, emotional intelligence is a little smaller than that, and your self-awareness is even smaller than that, and you're further away from the goal of a leader. So the gap there tells us by interpretation that it really doesn't matter how smart you are. You don't have to write a doctoral dissertation to get this. What you have to do is understand yourself, know yourself, to lead yourself, because when you can lead yourself, you can lead other people. But leaders who contradict themselves by leading other people in spite of their own behaviors are leaders who trip all over themselves, and they undermine their influence because no one wants to follow them because they're doing everything they tell you not to do. Okay? So the closer you are to the goal, the more strengthened and the larger your emotional intelligence and your self-awareness needs to be. Next slide, please. Leaders must behave intentionally. Accidental leadership leads to mistakes. There are 5 circles of influence that every person and every leader operates in: self, family, team, organization, community. Now, we talked about unity last night. Brother Maroney ministered to us on the dangers of division. He talked about unity, and there was some reflection in there about not focusing, not being selfish, not focusing on self in that aspect. So I want to clarify what I'm about to say here. You see the arrow pointing out from self. All right? This is not intended to imply that you only worry about you and you only focus on you. But as a leader, if you are not healthy first, you're no good to your family, your team, your organization, or your community. You cannot pour out what you don't first take in. So you have to be healthy. And that may mean saying no to some things. That may mean rebalancing your schedule. All right? But you have to take in. That's why I love events like this, because it gives us an opportunity. I felt like a kid 45 minutes ago. I bought OnSong, just a quick sideline here. I bought OnSong like 6 months ago. And I'm not the most patient guy in the world. So I expect certain things to just come easy. It didn't. And it's like, that was a waste of money. So I went back to the app that I was using and continued on. So whenever I saw that she was going to be covering that, I was excited. I wasn't near as excited as I was when she tapped a few buttons and I learned how to do what it was I wanted to do 6 months ago. When I bought it, I was like, yes! This is good stuff. So if no one else is a fan of that, I'm a fan. All right, I will pay for that session. I'm so happy for it. Thank you so much. All right, we all have to learn. Take in. That might be a bad example, but take in. Be willing to learn. And again, for the leader, how am I doing on time? All right, for the leader, we cannot, it is dangerous for the leader to let the ego get in the way. Because ego says you know enough. Ego says you don't need to learn anything more. You got this. Sometimes I don't know if it's ego or the devil, or maybe the ego is the devil. I don't know. But it's a dangerous thing for the leader to succumb to. There are times that people will talk to me and they will say things and they will brag about things and they will talk about things that I know differently. And there are times that I don't even correct them because there's no good way for me to correct them without my own ego getting in the way. That's hard. It's hard. But discretion and discipline teaches us what to say, when to say, and who to say it to, how much to say. And sometimes the healthiest thing is to not say anything. Circles of influence, they are all important, but you have to be intentional. And that is the key. Next slide, Sister Katie. Peace index. This is an exercise that you can take with you. All right? You can draw this on a piece of paper, but you can look at the people around you, you can look at your purpose, and you can look at where you're at in life. And you can take a personal assessment of that, and on a scale of 0 to 100%, you can determine the people that are around me, that I'm surrounded with, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how happy am I? How at peace am I with that? Or am I fulfilling God's purpose in my life? All right, if you're in transition, you may not be. It may not be 100%. It may be 50. Where am I in life? If you're in the transition of moving from one place to the other, your peace index might be pretty low. All right, but you can look at this and you take all three of those scores and you add them up and divide by 3, and that gives you your peace index. And you want to be somewhere, you want to land somewhere above 90%. But don't ever expect to live there. It's very dynamic and it flows. And what was recommended to me was to take a peace score every 3 months and just to make sure you're on pace. Why is this important? This is important because if you're not at peace as a leader, it's going to show in your leadership. If you're stressed as a leader, you can only hide stress so long. We try, we succeed for a while, but then you get stretched so thin that sometimes you just can't hide it anymore. All right, so you need to focus on your peace, and in a spiritual framework and context, that's something that the Holy Ghost can help us with. Next slide, Sister Katie. The 70-30 principle. I want you to think of it this way. If I had thought about it in enough time in advance, I would have brought some materials with me. Sister Joy asked me not less than twice, do you need anything? And I said, no, I'm good. So this is on me this morning. But how many right-handed folk do we have this morning? That's almost everybody. So any of you right-handed people, are you comfortable using your left hand? Depends on what it is, yeah. All right, so imagine writing your name. No takers? Okay. That's the 70%. It's natural. It's kind of an unconscious competence. I don't have to think about it. 70% of the things that we do in our leadership and in our life typically are the natural behaviors. 30% is like signing your name with your left hand. It's uncomfortable. It's unnatural. And you have to really, really think about it. It becomes a learned behavior. I want you to think of that as your leadership journey, because it's not natural. It requires learned behaviors, and it requires practice, and it requires effort. All right, if I sign my name with my left hand, it doesn't look well. When I sign my name with my right hand, it don't look good either. but it looks worse when I sign it with my left hand, all right? So, and I'm a lot slower at it. I have to really concentrate, and I have to really think. All right? I know this is basic this morning, but that's what we get tripped up on most of the time in leadership, is the basic stuff. So I want you to consider this today. In your leadership, sometimes the most important thing for you to do is to stop and to think. The gut intuitive reaction is not always the right one. Now, with experience, and I know pastoral leaders here this morning understand what I'm saying. With experience, that gut starts to speak to you sometimes, and you know. Call it intuition, call it God, call it whatever you want. Maybe it's both. But you start to know and you start to recognize some things, and I can identify with that. But what I've also learned in my leadership journey is that sometimes I'm wrong. Unless it's been a thus saith God moment. Sometimes I've misread the behavior of the person that I've just judged. So sometimes it's just a stop and a think. Next slide, Sister Katie. So that's why this, and I'm not going to re-explain this, but I just wanted to reflect on it. That's the reason why this is so important. Know yourself. Now, the genuine way to really know yourself is to do a study, to be walked through a study of your personality, and then start attaching those traits and behaviors to your leadership to know what your kryptonite is. Because everybody in this room has kryptonite. All right, if you're familiar with Superman at all, you understand what I'm saying. Everybody has something that is a weakness to you, or something that trips you up. We all have it. The point is to acknowledge it and learn how to manage it. All right. I have kryptonite. I gave you an example earlier. My kryptonite is my mornings. Okay? I tell my staff at work, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. All right? There are people that preach and teach against that statement, and I realize that there can be good to bad to almost anything that's said, and everything has to be done in moderation. But in those moments where you are managing your kryptonite, sometimes you got to just manage yourself. All right. So next slide, Sister Katie. Core process. This is another exercise I'll leave with you. Let me walk you through it real quick. And this really requires a lot of in-depth training, but I think there's some surface things that we can get here. And it's built off of the Know Yourself to Lead Yourself model. But when you are having a problem with someone on your team, whether it's church, work, wherever, it could be your boss, because sometimes you have to manage up. All right, when you are having a problem, you can take it to the core process, and you can start looking at call it, own it, response, execute. Call it is the what. And you just basically, and if we had a flip chart this morning, we could walk through an exercise if time allowed. But you just make a list of all of the possible whats. What's the problem? I've got a problem with Sister Joy. I don't, so this is just an exercise. I've got a problem with, well, what's my problem with Sister Joy? I don't know. So I can take it to paper and I can draw it out. What's my problem? Well, she talked to me this way, or she did this, or she looked at me this way, and this and that, and then that we can get it out all on paper. And then we identify what's the real issue. Now the trick here is you have to be real with yourself. Okay? Because the point of this exercise, and I reflect back on one of my earlier statements this morning when I said that society has tried to teach us by pattern that when a leader has a problem with everybody, it's everybody else's fault, not the leader's. And what I teach to our leadership is what's your lead? What's my learning opportunity as a leader? All right, again, I'm not casting all the blame on the leader, but I am emphasizing the responsibility for how you approach the problem. So what's my learning? What can I learn out of my issue with Sister Joy? I have practiced this. I practiced this. I'll tell you how I practiced it. I practiced this. I was in a hotel room in Shanghai, China, and I was 7,500 miles away on a business trip, and I got an email from my boss. Now, my boss knows about this, so if he ever gets wind of whatever casting here, he's heard it. All right, we've talked about it. But I got an email from him, and something had went wrong with a customer, some mistakes had happened in the operation that I'm responsible for, and again, responsibility runs high. I got an email, and the email said this: why is it every time you're gone something wrong happens? Brother Clark, the force was strong with that one that day, and it wasn't the Holy Ghost. I paced my hotel room floor for 2 hours. I kid you not. Because it made me mad. So, there's time difference. Sister Patty, I'm on the phone. I'm talking to what's going on, what happened. I got an understanding of what was going on. And then I tried to connect that to what he said. It's like, we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. He don't know what happened. He's making us up. What's going on here? So I went to this. And I started charting out, why am I so upset? Why did that make me pace a hotel room floor for 2 hours? My legs were tired. Why? So I start charting, I start calling, I start charting, and I was honest with myself. It's no good if you're not honest with yourself. It made me mad. Why did it make you mad? That's the why is the own it part. Why did it make you mad? And whenever I come down to it, I listed several things. I probably still have the paper somewhere. But I listed several things. Whenever it come down to it, let me tell you why it made me mad. It bruised my ego. It was nothing more than that. And when I figured that out, it changed my email response back to him. Email, text, social media, doesn't matter what the platform. The worst thing you can do as a leader is respond immediately when you're aggravated. Write it if you have to. If I'm super aggravated, I'll hit reply, and I'll take the name out of the email send to, so I can't send it by accident, because I've done that before. You live and learn. You cannot pick up the phone and say, hey, delete that before you read it, without making them want to read it. All right? But I sometimes I will type it, and I'll get it out, and I'll go take a walk. And on the walk, most of the time I realize I need to word that different. I responded back to him after walking through the core process. I called it. I understood what the what was. I owned it. I understood what the why was. At that point, I realized what my learning opportunity was. The response was the email. The time or the execution was right then. I replied back to him with the facts and the details and told him that I was willing to discuss it further when I got home. You know what the next response was? No need to discuss. I understand clearly. Thank you for looking into it. Do you know what the response could have been if I had emailed him the way I wanted to? Get on the plane now, son. Right? You have to manage yourself. Even in the church. Even in a spiritual environment. Because the Holy Ghost, please, God, you know my heart. Please don't misunderstand me here. The Holy Ghost will not fix what you don't let it. As my pastor says, God is a gentleman. He's not going to force himself on you. All right? We need the Holy Ghost. We need the moving of prophetic works in our environment. We need tongues and interpretation. But if we leave those things in an altar and we walk out no different, then that's not fixing us. I have a responsibility in the matter to contribute to the process. Next slide, Sister Katie. I've got to walk quickly here. Power test. Question for you this morning. If you are a boss or a leader or you're in charge, power test is power times humility equals true influence. So your people on the other side of you are asking themselves, whenever they're interacting with you, they're asking themselves, is that person for me? Or are they against me? Or are they just for themselves? They'll never tell you that, but that's what they're asking themselves subconsciously. Okay? So I ask you a question this morning, and I want you to take it away as a reflection. What's it like to be on the other side of you? Okay? Next slide, Sister Katie. Self-preservation. I'm walking kind of quickly here, but some questions that you can ask yourself. And I wish if I had 6 more hours, we could go through self-preservation clearly. But questions that are difficult to ask, but they're helpful, is what are you afraid of losing? What are you trying to hide? And what are you trying to prove? And to who? Those are important questions for the leader to really decompress reality. It helps us get on the other side of the layer of ego and really see our true self, because our behavior is manipulated by these things. And if you've got walls of self-preservation up around you, you'll never maximize your influence with your team. All they need is real people. Real people. Next slide real quick. Power of the medium. In bringing effective challenge to people, text messaging, statistically speaking, is 10% effective. Sorry, introverts, you need to talk to people. Okay? Email is 15% effective. Phone calls, 35%. Video chat, 70%. In person, 95% more effective. It removes it removes the misunderstandings. It removes the assumptions. It removes the self-interpretation of what I think they said and what tone I envision. Well, they typed that like this. They said okay, but they really said okay. Right? In person removes that. Next slide. And for the leader, it's important that you avoid the boomerang effect. Be interested before being interesting. How do I do that? When I meet someone or when I'm talking with someone, I ask them questions about them rather than posturing myself. And whenever they talk about how great life is and whatever, I don't have to feel the need to compete with that. Well, let me tell you what our church is doing. That's what creates a spirit of competition. Is if Brother Clark's in revival, building a new church, God bless him, it's great. We need to support that. All right? But what creates a spirit of competition is that he said, man, we baptized 7 in Jesus' name. Yeah, we baptized 2. But if I can be interested instead of being interesting and avoid the boomerang effect and making the conversation about me, then I can maximize my leadership as a fellow brother and a colleague in the ministry. And then I can lay my ego aside and I can say, God bless, greater grace. Right? All right. I'm closing with this. Stand with me, please. I'm going to ask Sister Joy to come. Thank you, Sister Katie. Last slide here. Dr. Maxwell said, the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The leader adjusts the sails. That's what we're doing this morning. We're adjusting sails. And what works in one season of life may not work in the next chapter. Sometimes you just have to adjust the sails. In the Message version, Hebrews 13:7, I read one more time. It says, appreciate your pastoral leaders who gave you the Word of God. Take a look at the way they live and let their faithfulness instruct you as well as their truthfulness. For the leaders today, this means that you watch, you receive, and we emulate. All right. I wonder if we could just lift our hands and just ask God to help us today as Sister Joy comes, and thank God for His Word.
So much. That's, man, some of those things are a little hard to hear, but they are so needed. And when he was saying about sometimes as leaders we feel justified in our aggravation, our frustration. I know I've been there so many times. But my response, when you said in that moment, don't respond in that moment because you can do more damage responding out of your emotions, out of your frustration, when if we just wait and have a little talk with Jesus. And then our response can make a difference instead of making the problem worse. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to take another just about a 5-minute break if you need to. We're going to come right back. Shane Frazier is with us from Oklahoma. I'm so thankful that they're here this weekend. He is like a sound guru, magician. He's amazing. So he has a lot of very helpful tips about sound, and he's going to go into some other things as well. So come back in about 5 minutes, and we're going to get started with that one. And then lunch will be provided over in the Family Life Center as soon as Brother Shane is finished. So please make your way over there. Lunch is for everyone. Thank you.
Here, bud. Excuse me. Coming down. Yes, sirree. Oh. friends. Don't go yet. All right, come on down. Come on down. Whatever you think. Okay. Yeah, hold on a second. Is this? Test 1, 2. Y'all hear that? I don't hear it very good. I don't want the feedback. Sound guy make feedback, that'd be bad. Test 1, 2. All right. I need. All right. Can everybody see this and that and all this okay? All right. Thanks, Joy, for having us up and putting on this conference. Get situated up here. All right. So I'm Shane Frazier, Mystic's husband. She used to go here till I stole her and took her to Oklahoma. But this is what I do in Oklahoma. I chose that for Scotty McCreary. Another youth conference. There's my dad installing some speakers in his church. Blues festival. So I have a company, Cyber Sound Productions. Been doing that since 2013. Before that, I was it's not loud enough. Before that, I was a multimedia director at a church, which encompassed everything multimedia. It was sound, projection, lights, whatever. And so they finally convinced me to make this little sound class, so I put together a little something. Hopefully everybody gets something out of it. How many are actually sound guys at your church, or sound women, sound person? 1.5. So how many's trying to learn to be sound? So more. Okay, so good. So otherwise it might get kind of boring. It can be. It's a lot of technical stuff, you know. And this is just 101. If you're starting out, there's no magic involved. You know, I can't say if you just do this and this, it will be awesome. So these are just basic principles and things to, you know, if you can understand the fundamentals, then the other stuff will probably come to you. So let's go over the what we're going to learn here today. Why do we do it? Responsibilities. We're going to talk about operation, signal flow, cables, microphones, sound check. Now I've had Pro Presenter in there. That's not right. I was trying to bring my buddy with me. He wasn't, and it was too short notice anyway, so he didn't get to come. But he was going to do that. So when we're done with the class, see, you'll be a certified. Can y'all read that? What they think I do, what I actually do, sit there and roll cables. Yeah. Okay, so what's the purpose? Our purpose is to produce the best possible atmosphere for worship through sound reinforcement. This includes, but is not limited to, creating the best music mix possible, creating an audio mix that meets the mood the pastor or worship leader wants to convey, and supporting the audio needs of the people involved with the church service, ultimately glorifying God through excellent audio services. So let's talk about some tasks. What's the physical tasks for the sound guy? He's going to set up the stage with the musicians, perform proper line check, perform proper sound check, including gain settings, monitor mixes, volume settings, and EQ mixing process. Work with the vocalist to check the battery levels in your radio mics. Check with the worship leader and pastor for schedule or any schedule changes. So you're going to communicate. So during the service, we're responsible for adjusting sound levels during the service as needed. Responsible for following worship leader's direction and musician's direction during the service. For example, boost the monitor levels. You know, they need more this or that in their monitor. Responsible for recording the service. Responsible for following stage and schedule cues. Responsible for providing a distraction-free service as it relates to audio production. So I think some of the other guys already talked about that. So post-service, our responsibilities would be return media to individuals. For example, if you had a visiting minister, missionary, whoever had a CD or song track they sang to. So it's your responsibility to get that back to them. Talk with the band to find out if any issues existed for them during the service. Then note any broken or faulty equipment, take it out of service as soon as possible so it ain't still broke next Sunday. Then clear the stage if that's something you do. Most of this stuff stays in place, but we like to keep the stage. Y'all do pretty good. Keep it nice and neat. Roll up the cables, put it away. Do we have extra cables laying around somewhere? I forgot to ask you. Okay, because this is it's hard to see, but that's just a mess of cables. Bird's nest, as they say. So, never fails. Okay, never fails when you need to make a patch real quick or something. That's what it looks like, and it takes forever, and you got to yank them all out. So, every good sound man should know how to roll a cable. That'll work. All right. You can see these are yeah. You can see these are I need a long one. I'll make it longer like this. So it has a natural roll to it, and you can see these are brand new, so they come in a package, and they were probably rolled up like this, that small, but we're going to do it a little bigger. Throw it out there, get it straight as you can, and here's what you want to do. So you don't do this. That's when you come work for me, that's the first thing you learn. Don't do that. So you want to make a loop, and this loop ain't perfect, like I said, because it's still got a little memory left from being shipped. So, the first time, this is called the over-under method. So the next loop, I'm going to go under and pull it around like this way. Okay? And then over and under this way. Does that make sense? You'll get used to it, and then before long, you'll be rolling your iPhone charger like that. But then when you do it right and you throw it out, there's no kinks. And not only is there no kinks, but there's no twist. So, roll cable. It's important because when you got a whole trunk full of cables, or a whole room or whatever, they can all get thrown in the box. Do the over-under method, put a tie wrap on them, so next time you go to use them, pull them out, and it's all good. All right, how to turn on all the lights. Well, all the systems. We're talking about audio today. So, important thing, amps on last and off first. That's a golden rule of sound stuff. Why do we do that? Keeps the system from popping. Everybody's heard the popping, right? The loud thump. I suggest make up a laminated quick operation guide to leave in the sound booth or wherever. So anybody can come up and it's spelled out. This is on first, this switch. They make systems that one switch. That's how we have it at our church. Because we was able to do it from scratch. One switch turns it on, it delays the amps for however long so the board can boot up, then turns the amps on. And in reverse when you shut it down. So what is the popping? Popping is clipping. So Every audio device from transistor to tube to a speaker has a maximum limit of how high of a signal can pass through cleanly. When the level of signal going through exceeds the maximum, the tops of the waves get clipped off or flattened out. That's where they get the term clipping. An analog system will clip when there is no remaining voltage available to describe the louder signal. It has reached the maximum voltage level that the system can reproduce. If it attempts to go louder, the loudest parts are clipped off. In a digital system, clipping occurs when there are no further data bits to encode the signal, results in digital noise or hash. So clipping, and you're going to hear me come back to this all through the session here. Clipping causes speaker damage. Okay, so every time you turn it off and you get the thump in the speakers, it's bad for it. Speaker damage in two ways: by causing the amplifier to output way more power than it is designed to handle. So here's a speaker, exploded view. So you got your magnet, your basket, coil, little yellow thing is the spider, and then the cone, the surround. Okay, that's how a speaker is made up. The coil, the signal passes through the coil and reacts to the magnet, and that's what pushes it in and out. It's really pretty simple. So, first way to damage the speakers is by applying too much power, exceeding thermal heat ratings. So there's a certain amount of power that can be applied for a specific length of time before you simply cook the speaker. What happens is you melt the insulation off the wire, causing the coil to short out. So it might not happen the first time or the second time, but sometime down the road, if you keep doing it, it'll happen. So see how that one on the right is black? Not a pretty copper color? That's burnt. That's a real thin wire, has a thin plastic coating on it. So when it gets hot, it just melts the coating off. And when them short out, then your speaker no longer works. So, second way is by applying too much power at low frequency, thereby mechanically ripping the driver apart over excursion. It look like this. So, too much bass, the loud thump, it just simply reacted too hard to the magnet on its limits and ripped it apart. So generally, woofer failures are caused by exceeding excursion limits, while tweeters usually fail to thermal problems just because they're smaller. All right, so we'll talk about signal flow. So this is important for the sound person to know, and it's just basically how the signal travels from up here all the way out through the speakers. So you input the microphone, probably runs down a snake or something. I'm pretty sure here you got your mic, your corded mics, and there's a snake under the stage that they all plug to, and then from there it goes back to the console. So once it gets to the console, it goes through the mixer and then out to the system processor, which they do use one here, the DBX drive rack. Handles crossover functions and all that good stuff. And then to the power amplifier, and from there up to the speakers. So I would suggest making up a diagram of kind of like that, how everything works, where it's at. They have software for this called, one is Lucid Chart. There's another example. So you list all his instruments, and then out to his monitors and different things. So you can keep that on file. Then when it comes time to troubleshoot stuff or add new gear, or you might just do a remodel, you know how everything's hooked up. All right, gain structure and how it affects everything downstream. This is what I want to talk about the most because it's the most important. You got the green, the yellow, and the red. So think of audio channel as a garden hose, and the gain knob, or sometimes it would be called trim or head amp knob, is the water spigot. So if you're going to fill up a bucket, there is an ideal amount to open up the spigot, right? So if you don't open it enough, and water just barely trickles in the bucket and takes forever to fill up. If you open it too much, water goes in the bucket, but then splashes out. Feedback. So, too little gain will give us weak, inefficient sound. It's not that there isn't sound, but it doesn't sound big and full as we typically like things to sound. And overcompensating on the input gain to get your weak level back up where it should be, introduce an unpleasant noise in the system. So we also make a mess when we turn our gain up too much. Pushing the signal through causes clipping. Remember, we already talked about clipping. Clipping not good. So how do you know when the gains are set right? Well, unfortunately, it's a little different on every console, but there's a pretty easy indicator that you can use to find the sweet spot. On most consoles, analog or digital. How many is using analog? Anybody still using analog? No? Okay. This particular one's analog. This is digital. Analog's totally fine. Digital gives you a little more flexibility, maybe. So you can find the input meter on either one. You have an input meter. On the meter, you'll see there's 3 colored sections: green, yellow, and red. Even if you have a single light on some of the old, smaller consoles, it'll show green if you're good, yellow if you're a lot of signal, and red if you're too much. Some of the smaller ones only have the single light, so a trick was to use the PFL or solo button on the channel, and you can see the level on the main meters, which that's the main meters there. So basically expanded that out to where it made it easier to see. So on most consoles, a great target for your gain is right where the green and the yellow lights meet. On many consoles, that's the number 0 on the meter, or 0 dB. So that, yes, that you can see that. Get my fancy pointer here. Right there, 0. You would want it to barely touch 0. And then that would be about right for your gain. For your digital consoles, let's see. So you need to know your meters and how to read them. Most analog use dBu, which represents voltage, and has a 0 for optimal gain on the meter, plus a little more. When I say plus a little more, so it is at 0, but you see the meter in the yellow, it goes on up to, I think it's like plus 12 or 15 or something before it starts clipping. when measuring in dBFS, which is what this is, you can see how it starts at minus, I think that says 50, and goes up, and the very top is 0. So if you hit 0 on this, that's maximum. That's like hitting plus 15 or whatever that is on there. So you have to know what you're looking at, basically. And your manual will tell you. So depending on the device's maximum peak level, for example, everybody's using digital, so here we're using PreSonus hardware. How many use the Behringer X32? 2? How many different churches do we even have represented here? You got Haven, 5 churches. So we got 4 Behringers and 1 PreSonus church. Is that right? Behringer makes a good product. A lot of people use it. So on the X32, the level meter should average around minus 18. That would be the same as 0 up there. Does that make sense? And then on the PreSonus, maybe about minus 15 to minus 18. It's about the same. So regardless of the number, setting your gain to where the green light meets the yellow light should give you a big, full sound with plenty of headroom to avoid clipping. So we want big, full sound from our instruments, vocals. In order to produce a good mix, our musicians need consistency in their monitors in order to be comfortable and know what they are playing is translating well in the mix. Right? Because gain affects everything else. Gain is the first. If I had a picture of an analog mixer, I think I do. I don't know if that, see that one there. There's a bigger one. The first knob on there is the gain, the red across the top. So when you plug a microphone into the XLR jack and the signal flows down like this through the fader and then over to the mains. So the first thing is gain, because gain affects everything else. So all these things are affected by how we set the input gains on our house mixer. We need to get our input gains at the right setting at the beginning of sound check by setting levels close to 0 dB or between the green and yellow signal lights on your mixer. Once we get the gain set, we try to leave them alone to keep the mains, monitor, recording, and all the extra stuff, to keep all that consistent. So take time to get the gain right. It'll change your mix for the better. So the next in the signal flow, you're going to have a pad switch, a high pass filter, polarity switch, phantom power. So all that's right here. This particular console does not have pad because of the way the gain is. But you have your phantom power, polarity, and your assignments. So phantom power is just, everybody knows it's just phantom power. It's just a plus 48 volts in reference to ground is all it is. They call it phantom because I think when it was invented, you know, it runs down the microphone cable. So there was no external power, so it was phantom. Yeah. Little history there. Okay. So the next thing in line for your signal flow is the EQ. So you can see on the, you got your gain, then the next set of knobs is this section right here is your EQ. Or on here, it's and I'm gonna switch to a different input so I don't mess something up. We'll go to this one. So your EQ section. I'm going to stop right here and explain the difference between parametric EQ and graphic EQ. So, let's see if I can do a demo here. So, how many remember the old boom boxes? You had two bands, high and low, right? So graphic EQ has a, by the way, these analog ones are graphic EQ. So it has a set width, we call it bandwidth there. So you have your centering frequency, which is there. It's currently set on 137. And the high is on 4.9K or 4,900. Okay, so you can see, okay, I'm adjusting 4.9, or let's go back to the other one. I'm adjusting 137, but what about 50? It pulled it down too. See that? So when I adjust here, maybe not as much, but I'm also adjusting over here. Right? So on your analog consoles, I keep going back to that because I know nobody has one, but for explanation purposes, they're usually set on like your bass would be 80 hertz or 100, and your high knob would be 10K or something. And then if you were lucky, you had a mid-range, and if you was real lucky, it was sweepable. So you could change the frequency. So parametric EQ allows you to change the Q. Okay, so now I can more pinpoint that frequency without affecting other frequencies around it. Because let's say I got a feedback, it's only one frequency I need to cut. Let's say it's 100. Well, if I'm going to cut wide like that, well, I'm taking all the bottom end out of whatever that is. So if it's somebody's speaking voice, it's going to drastically change it. Okay. So the next in line would be once you get through your EQs, then you have your auxes, auxiliary outputs. That's where your signal branches off. You can use these for effects. We most often correlate it to monitor mixes. Set them pre, set them post. Pre-fader, so the fader does not affect it. For a few instances, you will set them post. For maybe like they do the live stream here, so we set it to post. So whatever I mix on the faders, it translates to that aux feed. Then for digital consoles and some bigger analog consoles, you have DCAs or VCAs, which are remote controls for a group of channels that you can select. I can demonstrate that here. No, I cannot. This console does not have that. But on the analog console, this console does have subgroups, which are similar but not the same. So this is a subgroup of the drum channels. Got my master fader here. So when I pull the master fader down, I'm pulling, okay, so first we need to understand the routing. So when I assign a channel to a subgroup, so the audio flows through the channel, through the processing, and through the subgroup, and then through the subgroup to the main. Does that make sense? So you have to understand routing. Otherwise, that can be muted. Oh, that's not a touch screen. That can be muted. But all this can be unmuted, and you will not have sound. And you'll be like, why won't it work? It was just working yesterday. Well, if we know our routing, we have to unmute that. So, what's the difference? So if we had VCAs, which is short for voltage control amp, or DCA, which when we're talking about digital consoles, a DCA is, think of it like a remote control. So on your X32, you have a group of, let's say all your instruments are routed through one DCA. It's just a remote control. When you pull the master down, it takes that whole group of faders and pulls them down or up. There's no routing, nothing. It's just a remote control. But the difference in a subgroup is I can have this group of channels goes through the subgroup. The difference is I can add processing to that group as a whole. For example, vocals. Here's my vocals. They're on this subgroup. Here's my vocal processing. So we have slight compression on the group as a whole. So if the one person can shine bright, but if the whole group gets too loud, this will kick in, bring the whole group down. Does everybody understand the difference between subgroups and DCAs, VCA? Yes, no? Nobody's going to say? Come talk to me afterwards, I'll explain it. We'll get you on the right path. Okay, so I'm not going to go too deep on much of this stuff. But I'll touch on compressor since it's the most used piece of gear. So this kind of explains it. The level that she asked you to start turning the music down, the ratio is how much you turn it down, the volume after she shouts at you. The attack is how fast you react, and the release, how fast you turn up the volume to initial after she leaves the room. So a compressor basically limits the headroom. So it takes, at my quietest, I'm way down here, and when I get preaching loud, I'm way up here. So with a compressor, I can bring those two together so it ain't so hey, I can't hear you, and now all of a sudden you're blowing me away. I can bring that together. Does that make sense? Set that. So that's why it's one of the most commonly used processors. And there's lots of tricks and stuff you can do with compressors. You can even use it as an effect if you wanted to. But that's beyond the scope of this here. Okay, balanced cables and connectors versus unbalanced. So this is unbalanced. So let's say we have a long run of guitar cable. Guitar cable is unbalanced. Some noise gets introduced in the cable somewhere. Maybe it runs along electrical cables or something, or a fluorescent light. Now you got guitar and noise going to the mixer. So with balanced cables, it's introduced on the hot and the negative. When it gets to the other end of the cable, it's canceled out. So your signal is clean. So we generally recommend, keep your unbalanced cables short as possible, and then use balanced cables, like the snake that runs from under the stage. It's about 150 feet. So it's back there. That's a balanced. It's actually a cable about this big around with 28 balanced cables in it. Here's a example of a connector. 2 conductor or 3 conductors. Now, it just so happens the one on the right could possibly also be used for stereo connection. So don't get those confused. So here's a hint. You can go from balanced to unbalanced, but not the other way around. Does that make sense? So you can take a signal that's balanced and convert it to unbalanced, but you cannot go from unbalanced to balanced without a transformer, which is, we all know them as DI box. We got one on the keys, we got one for the guitars, bass, whatever. Drums use the DI box. Direct interface is what that stands for. Speaker cable versus line cable. Connectors, most of the time they look exactly the same, that 1/4 inch connector. Most speaker cables look like that one on the left, right? Sometimes you'll see them, they'll be like a fat 1/4 inch connector. So the difference is, we can see how this is 2 pairs, whereas an instrument cable is more like a coax design. Has your main signal down the middle, and then the shield is the negative. So, yes, it'll work. I've seen it work. But you're more likely to have issues if you just grab a guitar cable and make a speaker work. First of all, the guitar cable is real small gauge compared to these can be upwards of 10. I try to make all mine 12 gauge cables. So if you run at 50 feet, there's no signal loss. Okay. Let's talk about microphones. Dynamic versus condenser. Those are 2 basic types. There's a few other types, ribbons and a few others, but your main things you're going to see in church is dynamic and condenser. So an example would be Choir mics, those are probably condenser, whereas your vocal mics are dynamic. Most of your dynamic mics are, let's say if you're using them for a vocal application, I mean you got to have them right there for them to work their best, right? Lips on, as I say. Polar patterns. Oh, here's the differences. Dynamic versus condenser. So your dynamic mics are more, they're more rugged, they're tougher. Condenser mics, you don't want to be dropping them. Condenser mics needs power. That's where your phantom power comes in. Sometimes some of them have battery, you can put batteries in them, but most consoles these days have phantom power. Their condenser mics are more sensitive, like the choir mics. That you actually don't want to be right on the mic; it will sound bad. You want to be away. So anyway, dynamic mics can handle the higher SPLs or sound pressure level. So like if you see somebody mic up a drum kit, they're probably using dynamics for the drums. You might use a couple condensers overhead to pick up the whole kit. Okay, polar patterns. Now I'm just going to touch on this because the microphones in your arsenal, you kind of need to know how they pick up. Why? Well, one benefit is to know where to put your monitors. So the way to read this is, this one right here, that picks up in all directions. That's probably a condenser. Omnidirectional. What is this one? Beta 58. That's a super cardioid right here. It might be hypercardioid, I forget. Anyway, so this part up here, so it's 0 right here and it counts up. So that's straight on in the mic. Okay, so you can see it has a little bubble down here on the bottom. That means it does pick up a little bit this way. But it gets the most rejection right here on the corners from this way. So if I'm standing here, the best place to put my monitor is, somewhere over here. Right? Wouldn't matter, usually don't matter, but if you're running really hot monitors, I mean really hot, and they tend to feed back, then you might consider, there's even a company that makes Rat Sound. He makes a little, it's a laser pointer that you clip in the mic. You get set up where you want your mic, and you select what polar pattern you have, and it points 2 dots on the floor for optimum monitor position. You'd have to really be, I don't know. They're not very much. $30, $40, I think. I'm just guessing. But if you struggle with feedback, maybe you got the wrong mic, or maybe your monitors just need what we call ringing out the monitors. You ever heard that? Is where we'll put a reference mic, play some pink noise through it, put a reference mic, and cut the frequencies that are prone to feedback. And there again, we'd want to do that with our get back to my deal here. With our graphic EQ, we're going to, we'd want to take that Q all the way up tight as we can get it, like that. Cut them frequencies, 6 dB or whatever. All right. This is going to seem comical, but how to hold the microphone. Not like this. Yeah, rapper. And if you'll notice, most of their voices sound brr, 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 brr. I don't know why they do it. I don't know. So, like this, straight on. Your sound guy thanks you, yeah. Here's another one, what not to do. Now, everything I'm teaching you today is not hard and fast, but these are general rules to live by. Let's put it that way. Headset mic. How many uses headset mic? He used one. So we'll notice that the optimum placement just below his lip, right there. Corner of his mouth, slightly below the bottom lip. That's where you want it. If it's pointing up at his nose or down across the chin, you'll have a hard time getting it to sound right. Our pastor back home, he used a single ear piece like this for a long time. He's this guy. And it wouldn't stay in place. So they do make double-eared for if you have a problem with it slipping. They do make mics that go on both ears to keep it in place. Yeah, it fits around your head better, and just holds it better. And make sure you get it clipped. See how he's got the little loop right there, which is right here. So I made sure I could turn my head without it pulling. And this goes the same for later on when musicians that can or want to, with your in-ears, same thing. You want to have this clip, otherwise that cord's always going to be pulling and constantly pulling out your ears, especially if you're a singer. Or if you're like me, I'm a drummer, but I move my mouth a lot. I don't know why. I don't sing, I just all the time. Yeah, I ain't lying. I'll be, after a long time playing, I'll be hoarse at the end of the night with the rest of the singers. It's just the way it is. Okay. All right. How many know what proximity effect is? I'm going to. I'm going to pull this mic up real quick. I'm going to turn this head mic off. Test 1, 2. All right. Make an adjustment here. I'm just going to turn this equalizer off. Test 1. Okay. Test 1, 2. Okay, so I'm talking in the mic. And how many's ever heard this? So you talk in the mic, and I'm not getting any louder. But as I get it right up to my face where it's supposed to be, there's more bottom end. I'm not talking any louder, not talking any different, but you can hear the difference. That's called proximity effect. You can use it to your advantage sometimes. I tell all my vocalists, go ahead and put lips on, because that's where I'm going to get the best gain before feedback. If you sing way out here, I'll try to turn you up, but feedback, sorry. You got to learn that, and your confident singers, they'll be eating the mic. So, that's where I can use my high pass filter. Oh, I do got high pass too. Test one. There we go. High pass filters. So that's basically putting my voice. I mean, it's coming out of the mains mostly, but it's probably in the subwoofers too. So as I can roll the high pass filter up and cut that out. And don't be afraid to. You can see how that got thinner. Don't be afraid to run that up. I run it up till it starts sounding bad, then I back it up a little bit. That's right at the point. Because, okay, so this is at 171. That's probably about right. You know, and it depends on the singer. Women, you can go a little higher. Men, now if you have a bass singer, you don't want to cut out all of his bass. But typically, run it up there high as you can get it without it sounding bad. Because that just helps clean what I call the mud out of the bottom end, right? All right. So yeah, when you got 6 praise singers and the lead singer, and that's on top of all the instruments, and everybody, if you don't use the high pass, it all adds up to a big mumble jumble mess. Okay. Let's talk about teamwork, which the other speakers have already mentioned a lot today. So I believe the tech and the technician is, let's put this one up. He did it, his fault. So the tech and the technician is just important as the worship as the singers and the musicians. So some churches don't think so, but so the responsible and respectful inclusion of audio-visual equipment into a worship service can create an engaging experience for worshipers. Proper lighting effects can add contrast, depth, and dimension to set the tone of the service or song. Appropriate graphics, music, and video elements can also lend an additional layer of engagement during the service. So AVL, audio, video, and lighting. AVL technology is a versatile tool that can be effective in worship. However, like any tool, its misuse can negatively impact a worship service. The best AVL implementation still places the worship service front and center. House of worship AVL techs must not distract from the service, whether from technical failure or human error. Mistakes during a worship service can negatively impact the environment. So audio levels that are unbalanced, too low or too high, can be a distraction, as are interfering frequencies and audio spikes that create feedback or a pop sound. Even a quality sound system can perform poorly if used incorrectly. What was the joke I seen the other day on Facebook? Said any machine is a smoke machine if you use it wrong enough, right? So anybody ever had that sensitive moment where the minister spent 30 minutes in a message building up, to make his point, only to have the mic feedback, and everybody's like, and then it's like, well, now you got to start over, Or maybe you simply didn't unmute the mic, and we missed part of the lyrics. So it causes a distraction. People take their mind off God and worship and turn around and look at you. Right? So we don't want to do that. Now, we're human. I understand. I'm going to make mistakes tonight. Hopefully you won't notice. But it does happen. But the point is, know your craft. Get good at it. If you truly care about it, then you care about what's going on, just like the singer cares, or the drummer, or the piano. They're going to practice their part and get it right because they got to come up here and play it. Well, the sound guy's got to get his part right too. We're all on the same team, remember? So, attempt to build a friendship with other leaders. Find the time to get to know one another on more than a superficial level. Knowing someone's family interests and feelings will help you understand their frustrations and empathize with the pressures of their role in the service. Be committed to communication. On a professional level, both leaders should strive to have a clear understanding of the plan for each worship service. This includes going over the song arrangements, performing a thorough sound check, rehearsing adequately, and agreeing on volume levels between stage and musicians and the house mix. You can also record each service and constructively identify areas of success and opportunities for improvement. Use a talkback mic as opposed to yelling. Shouting at the stage over the music can be perceived as abrasive, even though you're just trying to get their attention and tell them something. So I know all these digital consoles, you can plug in a cheap, one of your mics that's out of commission, laying around, it's just a crappy old mic. That's all you need. Plug it in. Keep each other engaged and involved. Remember, the AV team cannot be successful without the worship team, and vice versa. So it's not us versus them. So a great way to increase communication and build trust is to stay engaged and involved as a team. Make sure both teams are involved in meetings and have ample time to express their thoughts. Make sure all members of the team are trained. Consider cross-training members to improve the utility of each group. Leaders can also find the time to mentor, encourage, and show appreciation to one another. If you're going to have practice or have special needs for sound, don't forget to invite the sound guy. It seems to happen more than I care to admit. Sound techs, remember one of the post-service responsibilities is to talk to the band about any issues they might have had. Communication. All right, what time is it? How are we on time? I don't even know what. Waiting on me to go to lunch? You do have questions? I am not done. Well, I'm getting close to being done. Let's talk about sound check. Now, when I did this class, okay, this is the second time I've did this class. And before, different situation. So we actually did a sound check, but it's not going to be possible here. So, but I can touch on a few things. So, in the sound check, the first thing you want to do is set the gains. Remember, the gains affect everything downstream, from EQ to monitor mixes, everything. Okay, so to do that, I would suggest have the band run through 1 or 2 minutes of the biggest song on their list. Well, by the biggest song, I mean, you know how some songs you're just singing like I'm talking here, but then there's either parts during the song or there's other songs that you're just really getting after it, and the drummer's getting after it, and everybody's getting after it. Yeah. that's the kind of song you want to sound check with. Why? Because if you start out here and I turn your gain up, okay, to make it a nice big full sound, and then all of a sudden you get after it in the mic, wow, it's going to feedback, it's going to be way too loud, and then I'm going to have to turn it down. Well, when I turn the gain down, now I turned all your monitor mixes down, right? So it's all messed up. So it's important. So when the guy when it comes time to sound check and he says, "Okay, test your mic," I can't set a proper level off of that, right? So that's why I suggest just play a song that you know, so everybody ain't fiddling around. You just get up there, jam it out. Sound guy, that's his main deal right then. He's not worried about EQ or effects. He just makes sure all the gains are right. Then you can go on to music practice, and he can mix while you're practicing and whatnot. Change EQ. So you could do each instrument individually, and you might want to do that if you have new instruments to set up. Like this conference, for example, we had new guitar or whatever that ain't normally here. Everything else is already set up, so we know line check. So the difference, that brings me to a point. Line check, you're just checking for signal. Make sure it's plugged in right. And then sound check is where you set the gains, right? And then go from there. Okay, so once the gains are set, try not to touch them again. So it doesn't, like I said, affect everything else. And I'm just scrolling through this here real quick so we can go to lunch after questions. So the sound isn't set and forget it. How many know that? I mean, it's a constant moving. Just like if I'm playing the drums, I'm going to play soft or not as much, and then on other parts I'm going to play whatever. Well, the sound is the same. You're constantly up there, adjusting stuff. To build a proper mix, we must first determine leader instruments and singers. So you put your lead singer on top of the mix, okay? Background vocals behind that. A lot of our music is, I would say, the kick drum and the snare drum. People clap to the snare, okay? So if you want your audience to participate, make sure they can hear the snare drum. That's their reference. 2 and 4, right? There's a few oddballs that do it on the 1 and 3. Yeah. But us cool guys, 2 and 4. Anyway, so you got to be able to hear the snare. Now, your hi-hat, it's tempo reference, but it's mixed a little bit behind. It's not blaring out front like the kick and snare. Then your other instruments depend on, where they, just depends on the song and what their part is, what their role is. I noticed last night, the chord keyboard was playing pad sound. Well, that's not a lead instrument. I'm not going to mix it in front of everybody else. I'm going to put the piano or whoever's doing the melody up front. If a guitar solo comes up, or even just a lick to fill in, I might put him up and bring him back down. Brings to another point. Guitar players and everybody else, but mainly guitar players. If you're the lead player and you have the solos throughout the song, consider using a gain pedal. So when your solo time comes up, you stomp that pedal and it automatically boosts you 8 to 10 dB, right? So if you wait on the sound guy to do it every time, he might be busy with something else. He might be a second late and he's going to miss it every time, okay? So just do it yourself. And the same with the keyboard. If you're playing the keyboard and you got a thing, bump it up a little bit. Then on the verse, whenever, as the music flows, bring it back down. You can you can play dynamically on all these instruments, but sometimes you do have to reach for the volume. Okay. So let's recap. Get to service early with the musicians. Set up the stage, do a line check, make sure everything's plugged in correctly. Play a big song to set the gains. Remember, gain is the foundation. Clipping is bad. Can damage speakers. We talked about clipping. Look at this guy. He ran it too hard, too long, and actually caught it on fire. If your system is maxed out all the way to clipping and it still ain't loud enough, hate to say it, but you don't have enough PA. I mean, you can keep pushing it, but you're gonna tear stuff up. Last but not least, start the recording and check the batteries, right? How many times I get burnt with the batteries, I don't know. So that's my session, and we will have questions. You got questions? Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, it's bad for their hearing because you're going to turn that up to compensate for what you can't hear. So the whole point in having in-ears, if you'll notice, all the in-ears either have the rubber tip or the foam tip. The whole point is to block out everything, to bring the level down and exactly how you need it for your personal self. Now, I can't hear the ambience noise. The way to combat that is crowd mics. Get you a condenser mic, experiment with where to put it. I don't know. Hang one wherever. Don't patch it to the mains, but just have it on. And you guys use, since everybody's on digital mixers, how many use tablet or some other device to control your own mix? Okay, so you can just call up the crowd mic, however much you want it. That puts you can hear all the clapping, you can hear all the ambient. That's what it's for. No, that's very common, especially for a keyboard player. You see, have two mics. Sometimes they're singing a solo, but sometimes they just want to talk to the band. Yeah. No, but that's something cool that I'd like to experiment with. No, it's my understanding you can still put it on a bent wall. You draw out zones and you frame the wall and you tell it to be, adjust the, right, it doesn't come with the projector. It's some other program that you run in line with the projector, I'm pretty sure. No, you don't know yet. No, because we haven't ventured to that ourselves yet. Right. Are you trying to put your lyrics up there too, all in one, or are you just... Mm-hmm. Like I said, I think it's in the software. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I got. Oh. Yeah, I got cards. Call me, email me. I can recommend gear. I can fly down here and help you. Whatever you want. Yeah, I flew down here and done stuff here a lot of times. We flew down one time, we put that little strip in between the mains there, because you'd stand over here during worship and you couldn't. It's like, well, we can't hear it, but when we walk over here, I said, well, did the math, and you just needed to be splayed out a little more. Saved them from installing more speakers and amps and cost. So stuff like that. Yeah. I'd be glad to help you do it. All right. No more questions? Raymond's last day is the band's. He's got his finger on the suck button.